Meeting to order at 6 p.m. This is a joint meeting with the Planning Commission for Tuesday, October 10th, 2023. Madam Clerk?
I'll take the roll of the assembly first. Tim Hale, are you on the phone yet?
Here.
Thank you. Stephanie Nowers, I'm not sure if she's attending, Madam Mayor. Dee McKee.
Yep.
Robert Yunt, are you on the phone? I'm expecting him via phone. Moki 2. Dimitri Fonoff.
Over here.
Ron Bernier.
Here.
Doug Glenn will not be present. Richard Allen.
Here.
CJ Cohn.
Here.
Andrew Shane.
Here.
Lynn McCabe.
Here.
Wilfred Fernandez.
Here.
Kurt Skogan will not be present, and you do have a quorum of both bodies, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Are there any changes to the agenda? Okay, seeing and hearing none, the agenda is approved as presented. And if you'll all rise, and CJ's going to lead us in the pledge.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The next item on our agenda is audience participation. Anyone is welcome. Oh, we do have a sign-up sheet. Great. Yes. Okay. So Assembly, for the record, Assembly Member 2 is, what'd you say, on his way? On his way. Okay. Is Rob hooked up yet, sir? No. Okay. Thank you. Okay. So for audience participation, anyone is welcome to address both bodies for 3 minutes on any subject. Doesn't have to be something that is on the agenda. And we do have one person signed up, so we'll take that person first. Julie Nystrom. And if you just state your name for the record, please, and then give us your testimony.
Yes, I'm Julie Nystrom. Welcome. I'm here to share my story from our community council. We had a subdivision wanting to go in, and we met with the planning board, and it had to go through because there was no codes that it was going against. Our community council is concerned and quite surprised when we realized our comp plan didn't have any bearing on the subdivision going in. We're kind of an area where we like to keep our plots about 5 acres or more. It's throughout our comp plan, and we were very surprised to find out they were very sympathetic, but they said it's not going against Borough Code, and they had to vote in favor of it. An 11-acre parcel sandwiched in between 2 subdivisions of 5-acre parcels of 9 little 1-acre parcels between us. So we were quite disappointed since we had chosen to have that area be 5-acre parcels or more. And we thought the comp plan was what we had to stand by, and it had no bearing at all. So we would just like other community councils to know that, I guess, a spud or whatever we need to do for future. But we were all just taken away. We had no idea that our comp plan really didn't mean anything. So I just wanted to tell my story for the community council. We're going to work towards this spud in our area now.
Okay, thank you. And Julie, for you probably know, for the community councils, the assembly is going to, in November, have a meeting again with the community councils like we did like 3 or 4 months ago. So that might be something that your community council might want to bring that up also. So that way all the community councils would be exposed to your challenge.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Anyone else that would like to address the bodies? Do we have anybody online? We do have one person online. Go ahead online.
Hi there, this is Amber McDonough. Can you hear me?
Mm-hmm. Yes, go ahead.
I speak for myself and not as a Fishhook Community Board member. Tonight, Matanuska Electric will be presenting an update of its Fishhook to Pittman transmission line project. I assume they will extol the merits of the current process, which selected the northern route. MEA will argue there is no need for this ordinance to amend the borough's approval process for essential service utilities. The vote on this ordinance was delayed until January because Assembly members felt they could not support new legislation that would increase costs for MEA ratepayers. They felt the reference to protecting view sheds was too open-ended and undefined. They argued that any land use impacts felt by individuals should be overruled in favor of the greater good to the co-op's 70,000 other members. What about the implied cost to increases to ratepayers? Using the Northern Route example, rough estimates from MEA's lower 48 consultant, who never physically walked the route, talked about a $4 million $4 million savings over the southern Wasilla Fishhook route. An added $4 million shared by 70,000 ratepayers is less than $5 per month each over a year's time. Spread over the transmission line's 50-year lifespan, it's less than 10 cents per month, so any rate increases would be negligible to members. It is no mystery that most of us already know a scenic view shed when we see it. In fact, Borough Code 2305 already defines view shed as an area of land, water, or other environmental elements that are visible from a fixed vantage point, generally in areas of particular scenic or historic value worthy of preservation against lasting development. Can't we all agree that waterfront properties with scenic views are extremely valuable? In the eyes of MEA's engineers, an acre of burned black spruce swamp is no different than prime agricultural land with mountain views, salmon river frontage, or artisanal springs, as long as it saves a buck. When MEA routes its transmission lines through these areas, it permanently degrades the value of these parcels, implying that landowners should willingly grant utility easements for the communal good is an extremely socialistic stance. During MEA's northern route selection, the affected public submitted several alternative route options using more roadways with existing power lines. MEA has dismissed these, not because they lack merit, but because they weren't the lowest cost. MEA also argues that any southern route affects more residences within 75 feet of the line, but it is in the best interest of members. However, the fact remains that with the 8,000 flyers MEA mailed, there's only one comment out of 100 against this more urban route. This is why we need ordinance to amend Code 1705, so the borough can take into account all community-related costs and not just the utilities' one-time construction costs. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have anybody? Do we have another person online? Okay, go ahead. Whoever's online.
Hello, my name is Ben Rayevsky. I am speaking before you today not to oppose the Fishhook to Pittman power line project, but to express concerns and to advocate for a more considerate approach. I believe in the necessity of electricity as a cleaner and more efficient form of energy for both transportation and the ease of distributing that energy in comparison to oil. I feel I could argue that access to electricity could be a right. However, the path MEA has taken in its endeavor to provide that energy has been far from ideal. It's disappointing to see concerned residents verbally attacked in public, their voices as member owners disregarded, and they labeled as NIMBYs. My past testimony in this matter has always been about finding a more thoughtful and sustainable path forward. This presentation MEA is about to present is a result of a lot of hard work gathering information. It will be full of highlights of the value that it's bringing to Mat-Su. What MEA won't be presenting are studies on the increased wildfire threats due to the cleared vegetation under this power line, as the grass that will grow under them is more flammable than the trees that they removed. Nor will they address the impacts of ATV traffic across salmon streams. They will not tell you how many members specifically opposed the current project compared to the one member who specifically approved of it. These are basic concerns that should be addressed and mitigated before a project is approved to move forward. Our future depends on all of us working together, considering the true value of our decisions rather than just the bottom line. When it was the good old days, the cheapest option was the best option, back when salmon were plentiful and oil money was consistent. However, it is not the good old days. The cheapest option is no longer the option with the highest value. I urge the Planning Commission and the Assembly to scrutinize MEA's presentation. Though it paints a pretty picture, they have left out the most dangerous and most valuable concerns. The Fisher-Pittman project is indicative of MEA's treatment of their members. Please listen critically to their claims, and when making decisions, prioritize the well-being and sustainability of our community over MEA's profits. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you. Have anybody else online, sir? No? One last chance. Anyone here would like to address the Assembly and the Planning Commission? Okay, seeing no one come forth, I'll close the audience participation. Let the record show that Assemblyperson Nowers joined us at 6:02. And the next items is the joint items of business, the municipal separate storm sewer, the MPO, and the transit. So we've reached the items of those budgets, and the first item is the MPO and the transit. And Mr. Brown, are you going to testify or staff? Oh, okay.
My mic's not on. Thank you very much. I'm Kim Solian. I'm the Planning Services Manager, and I'm going to give you an update on the MS4 Stormwater Program and an update on the development of our Metropolitan Planning Organization. So I only have a couple slides. I wanted to be brief, and there'll be time for questions if you have any. So as many of you know, some of you are new, Commissioner Shane, so you might not have heard this presentation before, but in December of 2022, the Matsu Borough was designated as having an urbanized area, which is basically the greater core area between, including the cities of Palmer and Wasilla, the area in between a little bump down KGB and a little bump up towards Fishhook. And what that designation means is that we now have more than 50,000 people living in that area, and that there is a housing density or a dwelling density of more than 385 houses per square mile. It could be 420. Anyway, we have a larger population that's condensed in that area. So that triggers the census designating us as having an urbanized area. So when the census does that, there are different federal agencies that then require different regulations of the local government based on that larger population density in an area. And so one of the requirements is EPA requires communities that have the urbanized area designation to manage their stormwater differently. And so in December, we got the designation. In January of 2023 of this year, we got the maps that outlined where the actual urbanized area is and where stormwater will need to be managed differently. And so we worked diligently last year preparing because we thought this regulation was going to come forward, and we had hosted a number of work sessions with the cities and staff and community members to get prepared for what does managing stormwater differently look like for us, considering we don't have the borough itself a storm sewer system. So when there's a rain event or a snow event and the rain falls across the landscape, we're not catching the water in pipes and sending it somewhere. It ends up in our ditches and eventually flows to our water bodies. So we started planning to figure out, okay, how are we going to manage stormwater differently? And the EPA has the Alaska DEC, the Alaska Department of Environmental Conservation, oversees Alaska's MS4 permits. Fairbanks and Anchorage currently are in compliance with the MS4 permit. So we worked with them as well to figure out, okay, how are we going to manage this criteria? It would include both the cities and the borough to do things differently. So we drafted a stormwater management plan that outlines all the ways in which we would meet the criteria. So we have to do public education, public involvement. We have to manage the SWIP permits to make sure if a developer is developing more than an acre, they have silt control on their landscape. We have to go during construction and monitor the activity to make sure silt is being monitored. There's some good housekeeping requirements. There's some illicit discharge requirements, meaning if there's no rain and there's no snow melt, but water is running off a property, we have to go figure out, well, where is it coming from? And do we need to contain it, treat it, deal with it? So there's a range of qualifications that are criteria that we would need to comply with to be in compliance with this permit. So We started working on that plan in January. We have a draft of it. We feel pretty ready, though it would require probably hiring additional staff to manage the program. We met with DEC last week because we have been expecting them to send us a letter letting us know that you now have 6 months to submit your plan, and then we will draft the permit, and then your 5-year timeline will begin, because the permit gets updated every 5 years, and we're reporting on how we're doing and reporting on water quality issues and making sure we're protecting our surface water from stormwater events. So in the meeting with DEC, they let us know that they had not issued our letter because they were strongly considering, and this is good news, strongly considering applying the waiver criteria to our region. And the EPA has some specific waiver criteria for small urbanized areas. And there's like basically 3 points. So if your largest city is less than 10,000 people, that's like one of the first criteria. If you have less than 1,000 people per square mile, which we do, our urbanized area is different than other urbanized area because we are pretty spread out. And then the other piece is looking at our impaired water bodies. And so the Mat-Su Borough does have a number of impaired water bodies, meaning that we have surface waters that are contaminated. So Cottonwood Creek is a impaired water body because it is impaired with bacteria fecal coliform it could be from wildlife, but most likely it is from failing septic systems or runoffs from septic systems that were installed too close to the creek. Big Lake isn't contaminated from hydrocarbons, so mostly, motorboat pollution. And then Lake Lucille has a number of issues. Fertilizer, nitrogen runoff from people's lawns into the lake. And then also hydrocarbons from the Parks Highway of water running off the highway and then into the lake. So they're looking at those water bodies and they're asking themselves the question, does stormwater further impact the impairment of these water bodies? And then the next piece of that, does the Mat-Su Borough and the cities currently have land use regulations and guidelines to help landowners and property owners do voluntary measures or not voluntary, required measures to develop or put in buffers that help protect water quality in those systems. And so they're looking at our code to consider that. I will say that they let us know that they were concerned about the water body setback ordinance issues, and that if they're concerned that if we remove the setback, the 75-foot setback, that would make it hard for them to apply the waiver, because that is one of our ordinances that does support water quality, and it provides a large buffer on parcels for runoff to sink into the ground and for silt and sediment and fertilizers and things to stay in the soil before it hits the shoreline and goes into the water. So they're also considering, are there other voluntary things that the Mat-Su Borough and the cities could do that would contribute to decreasing the daily maximum load of contaminants in these water bodies? So could we do something else to help protect water quality and clean up some of these impaired water bodies? So they haven't let us know what those voluntary actions could be. They haven't decided if they are going to apply the waiver or not. I let them know that we do have we did form a water body setback advisory committee, and they will be meeting over the next year to come up with criteria to help deal with some of the setback violation issues and to look at how are we caring for our communal waters through guiding land use and making good decisions. So what happens now? They think they need a few weeks to come up with their decision, and then we're going to meet again and talk about what they've decided. So they did say that if they apply the waiver criteria, it will be for the whole region. It won't just be for the Mat-Su Borough or just the cities. All three of us would benefit from this. So my fingers are crossed that they decide to apply the waiver criteria and that there are if we aren't currently doing enough voluntary things to help protect water quality, maybe the assembly would be interested in adding a few more activities so that we are doing that. I think it will be a heavy lift for the borough and the cities to comply with the MS4 permit requirements. We will have to do a lot more things in terms of guiding development and watchdogging development that we are not currently doing right now. And it will just be a heavy lift. So my fingers are crossed that they decide to grant us the waiver. So that's really my update on MS4. We're kind of in a waiting game until DEC decides how they want to move forward.
Questions of staff? Yes, Assemblyperson McKee.
Since the water body setback is such a huge issue, I'm really glad that they recognize that. I think it really ought to influence how we deal with that. And I'm wondering, is there any way to prove that these impaired water bodies like Big Lake and the lake things are actually being impacted negatively by the 750 or 8,000, whatever it is, people that are out of compliance? Is there any way to measure that? Did it impaired the waters?
Through the mayor to Assemblymember McKee, I think the current impaired water bodies that we have aren't necessarily from the at least in terms of the chemistry of those water bodies. I couldn't say if it's because the house is too close or the garage is too close to the shoreline. So I'm not sure if we could get that information. Each of the water bodies has its separate issue. So like for Cottonwood Creek, we are pretty clear that it's either failing septic systems or septic systems too close that are during storm events leaching into the creek. So a voluntary measure that the borough could take to support water quality in Cottonwood Creek possibly would be to educate landowners about how to maintain their septic. I think when someone buys a home, they don't come with user manuals, and so you don't know if you've lived somewhere else and you've been on public water and sewer, you don't know that you have to have your septic pumped every couple of years to make sure it's functioning properly. So in terms of the other setback question about is it the homes and their proximity to the shoreline, I couldn't say. I do know that a 25-foot vegetated buffer goes a long way in supporting water quality and preventing sediment and other contaminants from getting into water bodies. And so I can say that with assurance that a natural vegetated buffer along the shoreline is of benefit.
Thank you.
I'll let the record show that Assemblyperson 2 arrived at 6:20. Further questions of staff? Yes, Assemblyperson Nowers.
Thank you. Just kind of following on that, does kind of a two-part question. Does the borough do anything to let residents around those lakes know, lakes and creek, about the impairment? Do we do anything right now? That's question number one that you know of.
Not that I know of. That DEC does publish the impairment on their website and talk about what that is, but I'm looking to Alex. I don't believe we let landowners know. We do when a plat review comes forward, and if we identify a parcel that's being subdivided that is along a water body or a wetland, we do offer, most of the planners offer best management practices or how to be a good streamside or lakeside landowner that has information in it about maybe not necessarily specific to the impairment of that water body, but things the landowner can do to take care of the shoreline and the water quality.
Yeah, seems like there's a lot of room for education with the septic installers too, to let people know that these things are happening and you know how they can check on it. The other question is, so with the impaired water bodies, like Big Lake has been impaired for a number of years, I believe. Does DEC have any requirements now to deal with that impairment to try to lessen it? Or do they just declare it impaired and that's kind of the end all of it?
Through the mayor to Assemblymember Nowers, I don't know. I could get you that information to find out what DC is doing, maybe to educate landowners, but I couldn't answer that question.
Okay, I'd just be curious if they have any requirements that come, so you've got an impaired water body. DEC has told us that, like, do they we're looking at these additional requirements under the MS4. I'm just kind of curious what requirements we might have now when water bodies are declared impaired, if they're in. So I would be curious in the answer to that question.
I can say I'm pretty sure why they are considering if there are other voluntary measures that the borough can take to help landowners, because we have, we have planning and land use powers, and we do actually have a lot of authority to encourage new development, to make different choices on how the land is being used. So I think, and to also, we have connection with all our residents. So we can do a lot of education from our side of the house that could help. So I think that's why they are considering that voluntary action that we could deploy.
Any other questions to staff? CJ, go ahead.
So this summer I went on a tour, and I think it was put on by Fish and Wildlife, I believe. Mike, the manager, was there, and in Big Lake they were talking about 2-cycle engines because their hydrocarbons are so high in Big Lake, and then they were also talking about so the reason I want to put that out there is just because it's not all about just what comes off of the land. It's what we're putting in there too. So when you see the guy out there with his boat or his jet ski, and not all of them are the same either. The older ones are more pollutant than the newer ones because they went from a 2-cycle engine, which is oil in the exhaust, to a 4-cycle engine, which is the oil stays in the crankcase. And that's the lower the hydrocarbons in Big Lake or any water body. Okay. And then the other thing I noticed in Big Lake too is they had this green growth plants, not algae. Somebody out there might know.
Elodia.
Yeah, and they were out there. One of the agencies, whether it be Fish and Wildlife, DEC, or somebody else, they're actually seeing it and taking it out of the lake, and they chemically hit it up with some chemicals. It kills it and then comes out. But I guess that's so some people are trying. I just want to throw that out there. I know I came in the middle, but that's.
CJ, go ahead.
As part of the Water Body Setback Committee, is there any way that we can get the DEC reports on the impaired water? I'm sure they're on the website, but can you provide them to the group so that we can start looking at that now?
Absolutely.
Okay, thanks.
So I have a couple questions. So when they're talking about the contaminated water bodies, that's just was your meeting with them just for the areas within the MPO?
That's a really good question, Mayor. So yeah, I mentioned Big Lake because the borough actually has 4 impaired water bodies. I didn't mention the Matanuska River, but that's a little bit different because it's the old dump on the outside of town of Palmer. But yeah, so we were meeting to talk about the urbanized area and activities in the urbanized area, because that's where the MS4 permit would apply. He wasn't specific about where our voluntary measures, I think we didn't get into that piece of where the voluntary measures might apply. Would it be borough-wide? Would it just be in the urbanized area? So I could ask that question.
And I know this is pretty new information to you. Do you have any plans to cross-check the 800 plus people that are in violation of our 75-foot setback and whether they live on the contaminated water bodies?
I'm phoning a friend from the back of the
I
room.
see. That's right. Call a friend here. Call your boss.
Yes, he can help answer that maybe.
Madam Mayor, members of the Assembly and Planning Commission, Alex Drawn, Planning Director. The question is, were we intending to see how many of those 750 or so people live on these impaired water bodies? I have not thought to do that, but we could do that. That would be
I don't know, but I think probably up to the task force, but it was just a question that went through my mind, if that
one thing
what
to
that
note
does present to us.
Yeah. So one thing to note is those 750 people is only on lakes. So I know that a good portion of them are on Big Lake. So that's a big one.
Okay.
There was a
And
lot
that's
of
would be outside, that's outside the MPO.
correct,
Okay.
but it is an impaired water body.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Any other yes, Assembly
Thank you.
Person Hours, go ahead.
I just wonder, as part of the Water Body Setback Committee, if not only could you get what bodies they say are impaired, but what sort of testing they are doing? Because I know the borough used to have a volunteer water quality monitoring program for years, and there was some really dedicated people that were going out and using equipment the borough gave them. That ended about 4 or 5 years ago with budget cuts. So it would be interesting not only to know what they're what they're seeing, but are we testing some of these other bodies of water, or do we just not know what the status of those are? So just a thought.
Further questions? Let's see, Assembly Person 2, do you still have your mic on or? Okay. Any other questions? Okay. No, you're just ahead. See, you already used up it. So now you're ahead there. You want to be sure that I recognize you before anybody else says something, right? Assembly Person McKee, go ahead.
Yeah, so they've determined that 4 bodies are impaired. Did they test, like, all of this place is just filthy with lakes? Did they test every place, particularly all of those within this area you're talking about?
Through the mayor to Assemblymember Key, I am not sure what DEC's process is to identify impaired water, so I can't speak to that. But I can ask what their process is and
I
get that
appreciate that.
information.
Thanks.
This is again a little bit off the subject, but we're sort of venturing out there. As I think everybody knows that DEC decided not to bring forth a person for our task force, but that they are going to be there and participate. Did they address that at all in your meeting?
I believe that they did not have a staff member that lived in the Mat-Su who could serve on the task force.
Right,
And I think
right.
that was why we did not speak to them
Okay.
attending the meetings or serving. And I don't know if the man that I met with, I'm going to mess up his last name, Jim Ripkema, and he's the person that oversees all of the MS4 permits in the state. So J-Bear, Fort Wainwright, Fairbanks, Anchorage. And then his counterpart, like he has a coworker, and I'm spacing his name right now. So I met with them, but we didn't talk about the advisory board for setbacks and if they were going to have, who they would have attend.
Right.
But
And I realize that that's not what you're
ask.
presenting
Yeah.
on now. So, but we ventured out there. So thank you. Any others? Comments, questions to the staff regarding this portion of the meeting? Okay, thank you. Do you have the next
staying.
one too?
I have another one.
All
And then I'll
right.
pass the mic on to Maya. So the other update that I wanted to give you was on the formation of our metropolitan planning area organization. And
You've got the slide advance
right
there.
I was like, hands-free there. Okay. So as many of you know, and like I said earlier, once this urbanized area designation is triggered by the census, there a number of federal agencies require us to do things differently. And one of them is the Federal Highways Administration. They require that we form a metropolitan planning organization to support transportation planning in the urbanized area. So as many of you know, that most of the funding that Alaska and the Mat-Su Borough gets to support our road infrastructure development comes from the federal government. Or we go to bond, and the road service areas, property owners pay taxes to support the RSAs, but the vast majority of the funding to develop our road infrastructure comes from the federal government. So their belief, and they passed the law, I think in 1962, that all new urbanized areas will have a metropolitan planning organization made up of the local governments within that region. And the purpose of this organization is to plan together where to spend those federal investments, where the infrastructure is most needed. So prior to us having an MPO, the borough makes its priorities and DOT has its priorities and the city of Palmer has its priorities and the city of Wasilla has it, and we all go about our business. And sometimes they link up and sometimes they don't. So the requirement is to form this new organization so that all of the planning for the infrastructure happens in cooperation with each other. So an exciting thing happened yesterday. So as many of you know, the requirement is that we have to bring all the different governments together, and you have to create something called an operating agreement. And then that operating agreement needs to be signed by all the governments and sent to the governor. And then the governor reads all of our documents and looks at our boundary and looks at our bylaws and looks at how we've decided to form and says, great, you did it. I support you. I agree with what you've done. Or I guess they could change their mind and say, I don't like this structure and I want you to form in this other way. But I don't expect that's going to happen. But we have been working for the last 2 years to pull this operating agreement together to really understand, the 5 governments that will be involved in the MPO. So it's the Mat-Su Borough, Alaska DOT, the city of Wasilla, the city of Palmer. So, it was 6. Kinnick Tribe and Chickaloo Native Village, because those are the governments that are represented within the urbanized area. So Palmer took a little bit extra time to decide whether or not they wanted to be involved in the MPO. And so that delayed our submission of our operating agreement to the governor's office. But they passed a resolution last month to be involved. And so we put that package together, sent it off to DOT, and I got an email yesterday that it was transmitted to the governor's office from Central Region DOT yesterday. So that's super exciting. So the other requirement in the federal regs is that you must form the MPO within 1 year of urbanized area designation. So now the governor has between now and December, hopefully to sign the paper and say you are now formed. So the next pieces that we're working on, the pre-policy board that was made up of Mayor DeVries and Manager Brown and Assemblymember Yunt in terms of who is on it from the borough side, and then representatives from the cities and the tribes, and then a couple transportation advocates, decided that they wanted our new organization to be a nonprofit organization. So it would be this complete separate entity with its own governing board, and not be housed within one of the local governments. Certainly it could have been housed within one of us, but the borough didn't really have the capacity, nor did the other organizations. So it made sense that we'd form a nonprofit organization. So we have a consultant planning team that is working on all the nonprofit incorporation paperwork. So our hope is that by December, the governor will form us at some point between now and then. And once that happens, then we will submit the nonprofit paperwork. So the city of Wasilla, Kinnick Tribe, and Chickaloo Village will be the incorporators of the nonprofit organization. And once they form it, then the rest of us can join the organization. I'm being clear about that because the borough, Nick has been very clear with me that the borough can't form another organization. So we had to put some boundaries in. I'm doing planning work over here and then formation happens over here, but we're not doing that piece. He's smiling, so we're doing it right so far. So hopefully it's going to be between now and December, those pieces will happen. We also are planning to hire an interim coordinator. As of October 1st, we are eligible for federal funding. So the state DOT, the Fairbanks MPO and the Anchorage MPO, and me as the project manager for our new MPO had a negotiation meeting in July and came to a decision about how much money our new MPO will get for operations. And so we'll get about $460,000 a year to hire staff, to rent an office space, have legal counsel, all those pieces. So it's time for a coordinator. It can't just be a planning project. It's like we've had a baby and it's ready to stand up on its own and do its thing. We also need to be working on all the financial policies and personnel policies because it'll be a new organization, doesn't have any of that documentation yet. Fortunately, the Fairbanks MPO has been a great partner. They have a similar model to the one that we're creating. They are a nonprofit organization and they have shared all of their nonprofit documentation, all their personnel policies, financial policies, all those pieces. The other thing we have to do is update our work plan. We have a meeting with DOT tomorrow. We are submitting that update because now we know how much money we're going to get. We have had a work plan in the past. It's called UPWP, and it kind of had made up numbers in it because we didn't know how much planning funds the state was going to allocate to us. So from there, it kind of moves us into January, and hopefully we form our official technical committee and start meeting as our official policy board. We open a Mat-Su office. We also have preliminary numbers on the planning funds that the state is going to grant us to draft our first long-range transportation plan, which is called an Metropolitan Transportation Plan, to do a household travel survey to figure out where people are going and where they're coming from in the urbanized area. So we make sure we're planning for this new infrastructure or upgrading the infrastructure based on where our population is and what it needs. And then hopefully we'll hire an executive director or promote our interim coordinator if everyone likes them, hire a planner, and begin the work. So some point mid next year, I believe the organization will be off and running. So that is my update for MPO development.
Questions of staff? Yes, Assemblyperson Fonoff, go ahead.
So you said there's going to be about $400,000 or a little over that for operating side of things, correct? And how much besides that is there going to be that's going to be going to projects approximately for what we have?
So through the mayor to Assemblymember Fonoff, that is a little bit of a moving, it isn't finalized yet. So I don't know if any of you were able to look at the STIP, the statewide transportation plan that popped out last month, where the state puts together its 5-year funding plan for all the projects that it's going to do, and each of the regions have all the projects listed. So we were expecting to see MVP for transportation, which is the name of our new MPO, have its own line item in the STIP that allocated a portion of funding. We expected about $8 million. What we saw in the STIP was just a line item for small MPOs that was about $8 million. So basically, they were saying, but there are 2 small MPOs. There's the Fairbanks MPO, and then there will be Mat-Su. So we commented, and Fairbanks commented, that we each need to get our own category and our own allocation of funding. And the state, I don't know if they pulled back the STIP, but they have gone back to the drawing board a little bit, and we don't have final negotiations. But I expect to see MVP get its own funding of about $8 to $10 million a year.
And the operating would be annually about $400,000.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, thank you.
Further questions of staff? Okay. Proceed onward.
Okay, I would like to invite up Maya DeSalvo. She is a planner with us, and she is going to give the transit update.
Yep. Right. Good evening. I'm Maya DeSalvo, a planner on Kim's team. So the third significant change with the urban designation is transit. And the way that transit is operated here in the borough, it's 3 primary transit operators, and then they're all nonprofits, and then a lot of health and human service organizations. So up until this point, these nonprofits have been able to apply for and receive rural transit funding for operations just directly through FTA and through the state. And with this shift, with the urban area, within that urban area, nonprofits are no longer able to receive that funding directly from FTA. So instead, a local government organization can stand up and become a direct recipient of FTA funding, receive that funding, and then we're able to pass that through to the transit operators. So in March of this year, DOT hired a consultant to help work with our borough staff to create a transit continuity plan. And the intention behind this plan was really to not have a break in service. So while we're going through this transition, we want to maintain services for residents and help our transit operators stay have the funds to continue operating. So Valley Transit is the main transit operator in the urban area. And they also received a letter from FTA letting them know that they would no longer be eligible to receive those funds directly. So in August, we presented to the Assembly our draft transit continuity plan and program guidance for kind of internally how we would manage things. And a resolution was passed that we could go forward and request that direct recipient status. So last month, we did send our letter off. We haven't received a response yet, but we expect that we will, hopefully this month. And then the work begins. So between now and the end of the year, we have a few different things we'll be working on. So when we get that direct recipient designation, we'll also have to create a supplemental agreement with the state. So with DOT, essentially them passing off responsibility of grant management to us and authorizing us to apply for those funds directly through FTA, kind of leaving them out of the mix. We'll also, over the next couple of months, be coordinating a few meetings with the cities, the tribes, the local governments, just to have conversations about how we'll all work together to provide local match for the grant funding. Up until now, with the rural funding, the Matsu Health Foundation has been providing the match to these organizations. We'll have some work to do again too, thinking about staffing and cost estimates of operating the program. So we have the benefit of having managed federal grants or doing that currently with the staff that we have, but we'll want to take a look at, what kind of a load this will put on the staff that we currently have. Will we need someone to manage this program and make sure that, if we're contracting for services, that our transit providers are still providing all of the compliance documentation and reporting and things like that we'll need. So looking ahead till next year too, this is a rough timeline for us. And we'll kind of keep giving you guys updates as we go, but we will find out early 2024 what our actual allocation eligibility is. So we'll know how much funding we can get. And from there, we'll start the process of preparing and submitting our grant application. We would hope to be awarded funding midsummer, so looking at July. And then from there, we would be developing an RFP. We are required to put out a competitive bid if we're contracting for services. So we would have to create that RFP, send that out, and then again, select a contractor to provide services. So currently, Valley Transit is the main provider, but again, it will be put out for a competitive bid within the urban area. There are a lot of unknowns here, and we're kind of working through what this looks like. We're working closely with Valley Transit as well. They still will be eligible for operating funds in the rural area as well. So again, kind of finding that balance of services within the urban area. But our main goal here is to maintain the services that are currently offered and help those transit operators stay in business. I'm happy to answer any questions that you guys might have. We will be coming forward steps along the way too and getting approvals as we go. So you'll be hearing more from me, don't worry.
Assembly person hours.
I don't know if you know the answer to this, but so will this change how much money flows to the Valley for transit? Like right now, the nonprofits are applying and they get, I don't know what the figure is, 10 million through that. Are we potentially going to see an increase or decrease in the total amount of money available for that?
It's a different pot of money. So I guess I'm not sure exactly the answer. We're estimated that we would be eligible for the urban funding alone for about 1.5 million. But again, we won't know exactly what that number is until probably January of next year. And along with that, it is a 50-50 match requirement. So it would be up to a total of $3 million that would be provided for those services. Again, it is a separate pot of money. So I don't know if you, yeah. Yep.
I'll just add to that. Kim Cillian, Planning Services Manager. Right now, the state operates the Community Transportation Program. And so they run a grant program and they get their annual allocation and they figure out how to spread it around across the state. And I don't believe that it's consistent year to year. They have a cap on providers on who can apply for that funding. And I think it is competitive. So with this change is that we will get formula funding every year. We won't have to apply. It'll be our allocation for our urbanized area. So it should provide some consistency of operations and help our providers, whoever ends up with the contract, plan for the future and expansion or contraction or however they want to do it. But it should provide some consistency for operators that they don't currently have.
Do you know, just one follow-up, do you know what the range of funding has been through that state program for Valley providers? Just, is it 600,000 to 2 million?
I can say that operating costs for the three main transit providers in 2021 was about 3 million divided between them. And I think like 80 to 90% of that was coming from federal funding.
Any other or board comments, questions? Okay. Yes, Assembly Person 2, go ahead.
I think everybody in the room knows that I started Valley Mover. So I think it's kind of funny that there's going to be a competitive bid now that they have built it up as high as they have. And now you're going to say, well, we're going to put it out to a competitive bid. To me, that's something just doesn't sound right there. I think, that don't even sound American. Okay, thank you.
Through the mayor, I can say that is the federal requirement for FDA. So that is not a requirement that we have chosen to do for this program.
Alrighty, any other staff comments or questions? Okay, alrighty, thank you. Mike, put your mic on, please, Kelsey.
On to the next. My name is Kelsey Anderson. I'm also a planner with the Mat-Su Borough, and I am the project manager for the borough-wide comprehensive plan update. So I'm really excited to be here to talk to you. And I'm also going to be leaning on my coworker Garrett to do a little bit of this presentation as well. So today we are going to cover just a bit about the comprehensive plan, kind of remind you all what is a comprehensive plan and why we have one and why you all actually play a very important role in it. We just recently did a public survey. And so we're going to give you a little bit of the highlights that we're learning from that as we continue to analyze those results. And then I'm just going to talk about some next steps that you can expect to either be a part of or see me back here again. So just to begin, kind of the why do we need a comprehensive plan? As a second-class borough, we have three primary powers, which are taxation, education, and planning and land use. And that is not an accident. So the way that municipalities develop has a direct impact on their ability to deliver high-quality services, has an impact on the way that businesses grow, if they can grow, the way that jobs are brought here, and the way that we just generally protect a quality of life that residents come to know and love in the Mat-Su. So our state statute tells us that as a second-class borough, we have to do a couple of things. And primarily, it's that we have to have a planning commission, which, some of you are a part of. Thank you for your volunteering. And that planning commission has to develop a comprehensive plan for the systematic and organized development of the borough. And then once that plan is developed, with the help of staff, bringing that forward to the assembly for implementation through land use regulations. Regulations can look like zoning, they can look like permitting, they can also look a little more like carrots. They can look like economic development policies to drive businesses to come here and thrive and offer jobs to our residents. So the comprehensive plan is meant to figure out, how does land use impact quality of life? How does it impact all the decisions that you are making on a day-to-day basis? So it has been 20 years since the last comprehensive plan was updated. It was actually adopted in 2005. So by the time that I bring a comprehensive plan to you for adoption, it will be 2 decades. And there's been a lot of changes, right? There's been almost 40,000 new people here since 2005. And that number is just expected to grow. And so with that, what we're seeing is increasing land use conflicts, and especially what we've been seeing in the planning department within probably the last 6 months is increased asks and requests for special use districts and for updating community comprehensive plans, especially from our communities that have experienced the most growth. So Fishhook, Big Lake, places like that are really concerned that their comprehensive plans that they have are not doing enough to actually help guide development, kind of like our one of the audience participation members spoke to earlier, which is a lot of communities have comprehensive plans, but they don't have any regulations to actually back them up. So when it comes to talking to a planning board about a subdivision that you don't disagree with or doesn't fit the community character and quality that you have, the comprehensive plans don't really have any backing. And so we're using this comprehensive plan to have a broader conversation about what that means and how are we actually guiding growth here. And then there's also the increasing need for a regional approach to economic development. The city of Wasilla just finished its SEDS and realized that maybe not borough-wide within the SEDS, but certainly regionally, their economic development area, GUIA, I think it was called, went all the way up into Meadow Lakes, North Lakes, South Lakes, through Wasilla, down KGB, and out to Point McKenzie. So when we think about what it means to promote economic development and have that be a strategic goal of the assembly, it has to be a borough-wide approach or at least a greater regional approach. So that's also something that we think that the comprehensive plan can help in aiding those conversations with the assembly, but also the public and business owners. The scope of work is as windy as it looks. So I was brought on as the project coordinator for this in October of last year and have since primarily been focusing on public outreach, education, and involvement. We've also been doing a little bit of work with existing conditions, figuring out what are the current demographics of the borough, where we, thinking about the MPO and the boundary that was developed, thinking about where are people going to be in the next 20 years, what kind of facilities are they going to need, how do we deliver those services to them. So the existing conditions analysis looked a bit like that. I've been, and we'll go deeper into this with the survey results, but I've been in front of as many community councils that will have me. I've been at chamber meetings, at assembly planning commission meetings before this, just trying to spread the word. And so that is something that doesn't just stay at, number 2 on the list, but that continues throughout this whole process. We're also going to be bringing in workshops with the Planning Commission, with the Assembly, to kind of have you all roll up your sleeves and be our thought partners on this plan. Because as you'll hear about, there's a lot of really big issues that our communities are very concerned about, and most of them have to do with the way that we guide land use and the way that people are existing in the Mat-Su together. And then we'll do some more public workshops, and then we'll have an actual planning document for people to review and look at and workshop as well. There'll be a final public comment period. And then finally, obviously, that last piece of legislation for adoption and implementation. So as I mentioned, I've been doing as much outreach as possible, and we have been talking to a lot of people. I am super happy to say that our public survey that was out in August and the early part of September got almost 1,400 people to respond to it. We've also have a commercial investment survey that 35 people have taken. That one we're much more particular about who takes it. We're trying to get it in front of people who are business owners, investors, real estate developers, the people who actually really understand what is happening on the landscape and what they expect their local government to do to help facilitate and build more businesses and create more jobs. So we're actively trying to get more people like that to take the survey. As I said, I've been to 13 community council meetings. We've done 7 stakeholder interviews and continue to do more of those throughout the process. We've had 2 steering committee meetings and 1 director's meeting. And throughout all of that, we are really just starting to see some initial themes around land use, services, the environment, transportation, and a general trust or distrust of government. And so we are having a lot of hard conversations with the public about what is the point of local government? What is it that we're supposed to do? And it's been awesome. And people have been really receptive and excited to talk. Overall, I would say that there is general excitement, if not a little curiosity, around what is a borough-wide comprehensive plan and why it should matter to them. So like I said, the comprehensive plan community survey was out from August 10th to, I believe, September 4th. We had 1,389 people take it within that time. It was primarily up on Facebook. We just promoted it. We did paid ads for getting it out to as many members of the general public as we possibly could. I also had paper copies at the libraries, and I put up QR codes at trailheads and different places like that, grocery stores, really just trying to make sure that we're reaching people where they're at. So within the survey itself, there was a kind of a free-form comment box at the tail end of it. It just said, parting thoughts for planners, and had an open box. And I was completely blown away by how many responses we actually got and what people put in there. I was kind of expecting like, good survey, or you should have asked better questions. But we got like sometimes 3 or 4 paragraphs about specific roads that need to be upgraded, specific problems in communities. Like, people really let us know in a great way and in a detailed way what was happening around them and in their neighborhoods, which is difficult information to get. So I was really happy to see that. And Garrett's going to go deeper into some of the themes that we heard through those comments. The survey questions themselves focused on land use and community resiliency. I wanted to get people thinking about where they live and the type of qualities that they really enjoy about where they live, what makes that a strong neighborhood, and some of the weaker points. What are the points of contention, or what are the issues that they're feeling, so that we can start talking about what needs fixing, what doesn't, what needs fixing by the government, what doesn't. So like, we had to get people starting to think about that. And then the community resiliency, I was trying to, the questions were essentially aimed at talking about how can we as a borough become more resilient to natural hazards, to disruptions in a food supply chain, to things like that. So getting people to help us as a local government think about what could priorities be for us in that, and what would that look like. So that was also some interesting info that we got. The freeform comments, there ended up kind of being 9 hot button issues that became reoccurring themes that people were commenting on. We're only going to go over 3, but I do want to make sure that it's noted that I'm working on a full survey report that's going to be available for the public. It will be in appendices to the comprehensive plan. I'm not fully there yet. So what we're giving you tonight is the highlights, but we will absolutely be sharing the full results for you all to read over and digest. So in those free-formed comments, something that I think should be recognizable, I guess, to all of you as you hear so much public testimony and kind of are living in those land use conflicts and all that kind of stuff, is people tend to be asking for the government to do something, to offer something that is not there, or they're asking us to back off. So in thinking about that and thinking that that's kind of the approach, right? That we're like, oh, should we categorize them by this is saying that government's good and this is saying government's bad? It doesn't really have anything to do with that. When it comes down to what people are talking about in the comments, it really became clear that it was a more neutral or less kind of approach. So that's how we approached organizing those comments. And Garrett will show you a little bit more in that. So I think with that, I'm going to give it over to Garrett.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, members of the Assembly and Planning Commission. My name is Garrett Verbeek, and I'm a planner as well with Kelsey under Kim Sullivan. So before we get into this, just kind of want to point out 1,389 people responded to this survey. And by any standard, that is an incredible amount of public participation. Kind of for reference, the Valley Board of Realtors had their Smart Growth Survey, which is a fairly recent thing in our community, that had 437 respondents. And the Matsu Health Foundation was proud to thank over 1,000 participants for their Matsu health needs. So this is about those two combined. It's by far the largest amount of public participation we've seen. And we had very good representation from all over the borough. So as expected, plenty in Palmer and Wasilla, but all the way up the Matanuska River Valley, all the way up to Talkeetna and points north. So this was excellent coverage. And essentially, when we run through this data, it's easy to look at me as an individual standing in front of you and sharing this with you. But if we think about the public participation that everyone has the opportunity to give at the beginning of these meetings, if that's 3 minutes per person, this data is essentially equal to 1,389 people standing in front of you and giving their testimony. So essentially 4,000 minutes or 67 hours of unbroken testimony was given to us by the public. And it's our responsibility as a borough staff to share it with you. So we're proud to do that. As Kelsey mentioned, this essentially had 4 parts to the survey. It asked about people's priorities and characteristics, so what they liked and what they didn't like about their neighborhoods, what they thought was compatible or incompatible business uses. We have that data broken down by area of the borough. So if you're interested in kind of more insights about your specific district or different areas, we saw quite a bit of variation there, which was really interesting to us. We then asked about food sources and security. We asked them about their priorities for borough government, so what they would direct the borough government to work on in the next 0 to 3 years, 6 to 7, and later. And then we had the open comment, which was, as Kelsey mentioned, pretty exciting. You know our neighbors, and when we give them an opportunity to comment, they take the opportunity to comment. So this is going to be a lot of information to parse. As Kelsey mentioned, she is preparing a full report. And if you are interested in either the raw data, in reading all 668 comments yourself, and having that broken down by district, we would be very, very happy to help you access that data. So beginning, this is the top 5 area-wide results for community character. So this is all of the districts, every location in the borough kind of put together. And essentially what we're seeing is that, as you can probably predict, this probably seems very familiar to you. Most of our respondents most value that the borough is quiet and peaceful for them, right? They prefer to not be in the hustle and bustle of the big city. They prefer the larger lots. They appreciate their friendly neighbors, the relatively low crime. They really strongly appreciate access to hiking and biking trails, and then easy access to food and home goods. Least valued characteristics are also going to be quite familiar to many of you. The number one least valued characteristic in the borough was junk on properties, and most likely other people's properties, because if it's junk on your property, well, that's anyway. But also concerns about low quality roads, concerns about a high crime rates, coexisting in the borough with the low crime rate that people also value. High traffic, but this was also very specific to different areas of the borough, and noise from firearms and traffic, which was also very specific to different areas of the borough. Then we also asked about what people consider the most compatible uses for their neighborhood, what kind of businesses they desire, and what kind of businesses they don't desire. And very, very interestingly, out of the 1389 respondents, 508 mentioned specifically that they actively prefer to live in an area where there are little to no services. And that should resonate with us. We understand that a lot of the folks in the borough come out here to be far away from government intervention. They legitimately want the bare minimum. They want to pursue the frontier homesteader lifestyle. And that is coming out of the survey here. But with them, so if those are 508, then another 700 people do want more services. And of course, balancing that is the balancing act for you, for the Planning Commission, and for staff that should go into the comprehensive plan. So the compatible uses, pretty predictable. A lot of people want to see local agriculture and farmers markets being supported. People want more restaurants. People want to see, not only the farmers markets, the retail option, but they want to see agriculture, active farming. They want grocery stores, ranching. So I think that's something that will resonate with many of us and be very familiar to what we value about the borough. Incompatible uses, we've heard that quite a few people do not view their residential neighborhoods as the proper place for natural resource extraction. Shooting ranges were also a top incompatible use, but again, that varies very strongly by area. Certain areas of the Matsu Borough celebrate being able to fire their guns in their backyard. Industrial parks, marijuana retail and cultivation, and bars, the vices that you hear about, that's obviously also a strong negative for many people. But again, this is area-wide results, all the borough participants together. If we start breaking it down into neighborhoods, that's where we start really teasing out the different areas. So we have 9 different areas of the borough, if I remember right, split out by all of their responses. So again, if you represent a district, we can easily give you the data just for your district. And what we see is, let's take a look at Big Lake. So Big Lake is an example of one of the areas where a shooting range, notably, is considered an undesirable business. And in comparison, Connect Fairview, the shooting range doesn't appear on their list of undesirable uses. So that's kind of just some interesting little notes on the different characters of the community. Of course, as you can probably predict, KGB has very high concerns about high traffic. And of course, as predictable, we don't really see that out at Big Lake. So the overall report that Kelsey is preparing for you will have all of these different characteristics broken out by neighborhood. It would take probably too much time to sit here and talk through them line by line, but we really encourage you to read these. We really enjoyed the data that we got and benefited from the large coverage. So this is also one that we don't necessarily have the time to go through in detail, but we have these pie charts. And essentially what we asked was, we asked 12 questions of residents about what they would have the assembly and borough government prioritize. And the way these pie charts are colored is the more intense purple is the most urgent, the highest priority need, where people basically said, so purple by percentage is the number of people who said we should focus on this within 0 to 3 years. And then the lighter purple is 4 to 6, and the even lighter one is 7 to 10, and the gray is where people said, no, this is not a role of government. So feel free, these are very insightful pie charts. 2 things that we noticed are by far and away the most popular borough priority is to establish community-based emergency response teams and training. And as a borough government, you're challenged by providing services to those rural areas and dealing with, well, should we open, EMS services out there? So this is a really interesting insight that in a lot of cases, the population out there wants to help themselves, and they're not necessarily asking for $1 million facilities. Some of these solutions might look more like, let's provide first aid training to local residents. So some interesting insights. The other thing that we heard quite a bit, so it's notable that promoting energy programs such as CPACE is the least urgent or least popular response for the borough. And interestingly, diversify and strengthen transportation and food distribution networks is also a very low priority on these graphs. And what we think that might have to do with is we saw many comments that said, hey, I don't know what CPACE is, so I'm going to rank it low. And we're thinking if we compare these questions to the comments ask for a lot of stuff that you would interpret as strengthening transportation networks and food distribution. But this pie chart's kind of ranked it low when you actually ask the borough residents. And we think that might be a little bit of confusion or not maybe being able to understand exactly what that means. And if residents weren't sure that that's what they wanted, they would tend to say that it should be a lower priority. But these are very interesting, and this would give us a fairly easy way to look at what the plurality of people or the majority of people would like us to be working on. So now we get to public comments. And residents were candid. We got a lot of public comments for what the borough should be working on. We got a lot of comments for the assembly. We got a lot of comments for the staff. One of my favorite ones was from a person who directed borough staff to get up our fat digital and come speak to the public more. So that's part of the reason why I'm motivated to be standing up here tonight. Of course, for every one of those, we also get comments that we need to spend less money and we need to not waste borough time and not spend gas driving out to Talkeetna. So the balance is the challenge. But as Kelsey mentioned, the way that we parsed these comments was by testing whether or not do they ask essentially for more government intervention in this matter or less government intervention or kind of a neutral concern. We took a look at 9 of these. That range from the large infrastructure projects, so the West Sioux Access Road, Port Mackenzie, Kinnick River Road, to taxes, water setbacks, water and sewer. We're going to go over 3 of them tonight. We're going to go over taxes and property taxes. We're going to go over water and sewer expansion, and we're going to go over zoning and land use regulation, because those are the ones that are kind of most in line with the comprehensive plan. But again, these are very, very insightful comments. We read through every single one of those 668. We encourage you guys to, if you want. It really gives you a feel for what folks in the borough are shooting for. And a lot of these come from different angles. So, not everyone who's in opposition is in opposition in the same way. And not everyone who's supportive of more government intervention pictures the exact same thing. So beginning with taxes, and very specifically property taxes. As you might imagine, overwhelmingly, people do not want to see their property taxes increase. Taxes in general, but more specifically, homeowner taxes were called out as being very, very burdensome. So we could read through some of these. What we tried very hard to do with this was to print the actual quotes from the people, because we interpret ourselves as just the messenger for the survey to the policymakers. But interesting comments here where people are talking about being priced out of their home. They're talking about having a challenge as a retiree with high value property but little income, how having the burden mostly be on property taxes can challenge their ability to enjoy the Mat-Su Borough. We also see stuff like not necessarily in opposition to more taxes, but a request to the Borough Assembly to allocate those in different ways. So let's spend more money on schools or less money on schools, directed here versus there. So again, we do not have the time to go through every single one, but they're incredibly insightful. And overall, what we've heard from our public is an opposition to increasing government taxation, particularly from property taxes. So working through that is going to be a challenge for the staff and the Assembly to work through together, because we have a lot to accomplish. But the next one, if we look at water and sewer systems, this did not get as many public comments. It only got 5 out of those 668. But this is overwhelmingly all in favor of working on expanding water and sewer in the core area of the borough. And this kind of feeds in, if we look back at the pie charts, incentivizing retail and service businesses in the Mat-Su Borough was one of the top priorities, I believe the second highest ranked one. And there have been a lot of business owners who have come to us and said, not having water and sewer is a real limitation to being able to open retail businesses, particularly certain types in the borough. So that's somewhat interesting, feeds into the comp plan. And now, the overwhelming number one issue that we heard of in comments was attitudes towards increased zoning and land use. And that's kind of in line, I would interpret the three individuals who spoke at the beginning of this meeting. Their comments were also generally urging more government intervention in land use decisions around the borough. And that was very similar to what we got from our survey. Out of the public comments, so we had about 125 or so, 126, and the majority of them, by about a 4-to-1 margin, are encouraging the government to take more intervention and take more responsibility in guiding land use decisions. Not all of those comments are encouraging intervention in the same way, right? Everyone pictures intervention in different ways. But what we saw very frequently, some of the common themes in these comments were people view more land use regulation as a way to protect their freedoms to enjoy their own land without having to worry about, as we saw, incompatible subdivisions in their minds next to them, without having to worry about noise from helicopters, for instance. People view this as an improvement in efficiency, where then if they have more land use regulation, they will not have to come forward to all of the plats one by one and keep on protesting this. So they view it as a much more efficient use of government time and their time to have land use regulation or zoning, so that there's kind of one flat answer and they don't need to keep on spending time protesting or encouraging these things. There's an example of a neutral one on here, or what we counted as neutral, just to kind of give you an impression of how we scored these. And in this case, it was just a request for, a limit on the number of cannabis shops would be a good idea. And we counted that. That's not necessarily way more land use regulation, but it's kind of neutral. And then, of course, we do have to consider that for all the 103 people who commented in favor, there are people in the borough who are opposed. So we do see comments that are honest comments about, please keep the Matsu Borough a place of freedom. Don't hem us in with do-gooder legislation. I'm not going to tell my neighbor what to do on his property. And that is something, we have those neighbors, and many of us have maybe similar attitudes. But again, these are all the comments that we received from the survey. A fuller report is going to be made available. We learned a lot from this. And if any of you are interested in the data, please let us know. We would be very, very happy to share this with you, and more is coming. But thank you very much for your attention and for letting me run over some of these first results. Hand it back.
All right. This is Kelsey Anderson again. One thing with this one that I wanted to point out, like a for and against, that really stood out to me was there was an against comment where this person, it wasn't just one. We heard several times that being able to shoot on property is really important to people, and they want to be able to do that. But that would be opposed. And an in favor of just a little bit more was a veteran talking about PTSD and talking about living in an area where there was a lot of recreational gunfire that was really upsetting. And he loves where he lives and doesn't want to have to move, but doesn't understand why he has to experience PTSD with his neighbors recreating on their property. So these are not easy questions to answer. These are not easy things to find solutions for, but they are very real problems for the residents of the Matsu. And they're very real problems that we are thinking through with the comprehensive plan. So one of the final questions that the survey asked was, do you agree or disagree with the following statement? The Matsu Borough is developing in a way that protects property values, promotes economic development, and delivers high-quality services. And as we can see, only 16% of respondents actually agreed with that statement or strongly agreed with that statement. The rest were either neutral, or the majority, 44%, being in disagreement or strongly disagree to the statement. When I asked that question, I was thinking about how to ask this question in the survey, I went back to the Assembly strategic plan, because as a borough employee, and especially as a planner, when I'm thinking through how to talk to the public about some of these problems, issues, or just subjects in general, I go to your strategic plan and I look at what are the goals and the priorities of the administration, of leadership, and how do I talk to the public about that? How do I engage with them to figure out if that's their priority or if they think that we're meeting our goals as a local government? So I kind of phrased this question in a way that hits at the 3 driving goals of the Assembly strategic plan. And so I'm a little disheartened to say that most respondents don't believe that we're developing in a way that is actually meeting our own strategic goals as an organization. And so I think that there's a lot of great work that we can do. Number one, on the education side, like, I don't know if, and we're going to figure that out through more public involvement, maybe people don't understand all of the great things that we do as an organization, all the ways that we do protect quality of life and, deliver services, and that we are there. So there's going to be an educational piece to it, but a lot of it is for us figuring out that question: what's the point of local government? What are we here to do? What are the powers that we have and that we operate in as a second-class borough? And then figuring out, what are the residents asking for and what are they looking for with us? Because I will say that through the survey, through the public meetings that we've done so far, we are not getting an A+ in school. So like there are things that we can do and should do. But that's what I want to talk to you about next, because 1,389 surveys and 13 meetings and down the list, like, that is still not enough. We're nowhere near being done with public outreach, and we're nowhere near deciding that we have a clear idea of what the Mat-Su Borough residents want. And so this is a jumping off point for us. This is us acknowledging that we have a lot to learn, while also acknowledging that we have learned a lot. And so the kind of roles and engagement and how we're getting people involved looks a little different for everybody who's involved. So for you all, Mat-Su Borough leadership, we're going to actually put a standing agenda item on planning commissions now for a comprehensive plan update, to make sure that as we continue going through this process, that our planning commission are it is your comprehensive plan. So we want to make sure that you are as involved as you can be, want to be. So that's one thing we're going to start doing. We're also going to have actual workshops with the planning commission, with the assembly. I think the one coming up is October 30th for the planning commission. And then updates to the mayors and the managers, and just trying to keep people involved, and then also providing ways and workshops so that we can really, like I said, dig into these problems together. And I don't want it, it is my goal that when I come to you for adopting the comprehensive plan, that it is extremely clear that it is not my plan, that it is not your plan, that it is truly a representation of where we are at as a borough, where our residents are at, what the expectations are for their government, and where do they want to be in 20 years, and what's our role to play in that. So yeah, we're just going to try to get people as engaged as we can. With the Mat-Su Borough and the directors, we're going to start doing some staff workshops, trying to dive into our zoning code, did you all know that we have an economic development code? We have carrots to provide to businesses, but nobody uses them. We want to figure out why not, and we want to change it so that we are bringing in more businesses. And then with the steering committee, we're having monthly meetings with them. We're also, like I said, continuing to do those stakeholder interviews, workshops, and then the steering committee members are also going to be involved in our public meetings that we're having. And then the general public, they get the most attention. I'm sorry, you guys. They do, because it really does need to be a plan that they see themselves in. I think in order for it to be implementable. So we're going to continue to meet with our community councils. Obviously, we have this survey. We're considering putting it out again to see, like, just keep it going. If we can get 1,400 people in a month, I would love to see what we could do throughout the course of this and see really what comes out of it at the end. We have public workshops coming up, pop-up events, and then just consistent outreach through social media, emailing, our newsletter, the planner platform, things like that. We made it to the end. Next steps. So our public workshops are coming up in November. There's going to be, I believe, 8 of them in person, and then there's also going to be a couple of virtual meeting options for people who can't do in person. They're scattered throughout the borough, and I want to welcome all of you to come and attend in your district or outside of your district if you're looking to get a broader view of the issues of the borough. I think that they're going to be really great, and I'm already hearing excitement from community members to participate and be heard, just have another chance to be heard. So then I'm also doing presentations at the Palmer and Wasilla Chambers this month. As I mentioned, the Planning Commission training, and then some workshops as well. So there will be lots of opportunities for you to be involved, both voluntary and kind of involuntary. And I'm happy to take your questions now.
Yes, Assemblyperson Venera, go ahead.
Okay. Well, I appreciate all your hard work and stuff,
Mhm.
but how many residents do we have in the valley?
114,000.
So this would represent like 1%
Mhm.
of our population.
Yeah.
I did the survey. I received it from a community council. Actually, and another Talkeetna community council emailed me the same survey as well. But I really think that if maybe a survey with our when taxes go out, as far as actual taxpayers putting their input in versus maybe somebody over in a fourplex or something on their Facebook that it's driving to Anchorage for work and not paying taxes. Okay, that's one thing. Some of the questions I kind of felt were leading. You had like 5 choices. Well, the choices I wanted weren't listed. Okay, that type of thing. But yeah, sending the survey out to the taxpayers, the people who are actually funding all this, that I think would be dead on. So, but again, I appreciate your work, and I'm no disrespect.
Yeah, thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Assemblyperson Nowers.
Thank you. So also appreciate all the hard work that has gone into this. Thank you to everyone who's spoken so far, the huge amount of work that you've been doing on the MPO and this. I'm really interested in this question of the do you agree or disagree? And you've got 3 components of that. You've got are we doing protecting property values, promoting economic developments, and we're delivering high quality services? I would love to see us kind of break those 3 apart and then ask people if they agree or disagree for something specific, for why they agree or disagree. If they think we're providing high quality service, what is that high quality service? If they don't think we are, what is it that we're doing poorly? Or, I don't want to add to your plate because, but if we could do that, and if we could look at it by area, I really appreciate that you're doing that, because that's a real, in a borough that's the size of West Virginia, that has places in Assemblyman Bernier's district that are barely got anybody. The opinions are so different than in District 2 in the greater Palmer area, where we do have a lot of density and a lot of growth and the traffic problems. And that's really helpful to me as a policymaker to think about if we're trying to do something for the borough, we might want to split it out. We might want to think about splitting it out by area because one size doesn't fit all. Yeah, if there's any way in those continued public meetings to get a little feedback on splitting those three, because those are just such key things, but really different. So I don't know if they disagreed with we're not protecting property values, but we're doing the other two okay, or vice versa. So,
yes.
Thank you.
Through the mayor to Stephanie now, or to Assemblymember Nowers. My hesitation with sending the survey out again is because there are things that I would definitely improve upon. And that question was one of them, because I think that we see it with the amount of neutral comments. They're the neutral people that were there. Because I think if I were to take it and I, really think we're doing a great job on 2, but not on 1, I might end up neutral. And so with that, we're talking about figuring out, do we want to try a different survey, improving on the questions, keeping them relatively similar so that the data remains mostly comparable at least, or just putting it out and having it be the exact same so that we know that we're comparing apples to apples. We haven't figured out the right answer to that yet, but I definitely know that with the public meetings, that will be a question that we'll be working through. Yeah.
Any other questions or comments? Yes, Assemblyperson 2.
Just a comment. I made a little comment up here on the podium when you were giving out your thing here. And that was because you said that the Economic Development Department really wasn't putting it out, and that there's carrots there and we should do that. And I hear from people that, the Mat-Su Borough is really not open for business. Mm-hmm. And that's like, what? You just only want the money from the homeowners? Why aren't we open for business? Yeah. And I feel that there should be a whole herd of people up here just going out there saying, please come to the borough. Please open up your business. Mm-hmm. I was at an event last night and the guy says, yes, we invested millions and millions of dollars in a building and the borough won't let us do business right on the Palmer-Wasilla Highway.
Yeah.
So that's why I made my little comment. And I would love to see us go out there and
yes,
not quite beg, but invite everybody in for whatever it is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Any other questions or comments by Assembly or board members? Oh.
I have to agree with Moki on that. There's no reason why 5 to 10% of Anchorage business isn't moving out here just like that. I mean, really, if we could make it economically feasible for them. Mm-hmm. And the other thing was if you could provide those surveys to every taxpayer, of course, they're not all going to respond, but at least you got a good chunk.
Yeah. Further questions or comments? Yes. Go ahead, sir.
Planning Commission Member Fernandez, through the chair. I'm sorry, through the mayor. I think it's worth noting that you guys just gave a 45-minute presentation about information that I know you spent hundreds of hours building. I appreciate your intent. And I really appreciate that you're being reflective about the process that you've gone through, the results that you've received, and how you can improve without being deterred by all the challenges and the questions that come from initiating something like this. I mean, sometimes just taking the first step and taking action really is the best way for us to learn and to grow. So thank you for doing that. I do have a couple of questions for Garrett, actually, if I may. And it's primarily because my questions center around the surveys themselves. You have a very impressive amount of knowledge when it comes to analyzing surveys. Was that something that you learned in this role, or was that something you carried forward in your life?
I would say my previous professional role was working for BP Alaska, and I was responsible for doing essentially technical communication to stakeholders from a variety of backgrounds.
Got it. So you're used to analyzing stuff like this for sure. You mentioned the VBR survey and another survey that had gone out in comparison to this survey. Do you know the format or the vehicle of delivery that was utilized for those surveys?
I do not. I think a very, though, important distinction to be made is I do believe at least one of those surveys was intended to be a representative sample for the population. So you can essentially choose two types of surveys, right? You can open it up to anyone, kind of like public comments or like voting, and anyone who shows up gets their voice. Or you can try to design a survey to cover a representation of your true population. I believe the Matsu Health Foundation targets really covering the entire population representatively. And I believe that the Valley Board of Realtors and our survey was more, we're going to treat this like public testimony or like voting. We open it up to anyone, and the people who are most engaged will give their feedback. We'll turn it over to Kelsey. I could have spoken. I hope I did.
Oh, just a little bit. The Valley Board of Realtors survey was actually done using like a company, I believe it's called American Surveys, but like a nationwide surveying consultant who actually did do phone calls and spot representation. So the Valley Board of Realtors survey actually is scientifically significant, has like a full representation of demographics of the Matsu Borough. And I think they had like 400 some people that they were able to get that with.
Realtors love leverage. I can tell you that for sure.
What was that?
I said realtors love leverage.
Yes.
So I'm not surprised it was an outside company that had
Yes.
performed that.
Yeah.
Thank you. I appreciate that, Kelsey. Are we concerned at all utilizing Facebook and bot accounts, AI influence? Was there any way that we could make sure that the accounts that were actually submitting comments or participating in the survey were valid accounts?
That is a good question, and I would submit that Mr. or Assemblymember Bernier's suggestion to associate that with tax would be an effective way to do that.
And this is me
Sorry,
brainstorming.
we're
with
tag
you.
teaming.
No, you're
This is
totally
Kelsey
good.
Anderson.
Yeah, this is a brainstorm sesh, so we're good.
Cool. Awesome. So our GIS team, so the survey was created in ArcGIS. It's called Survey 123. Esri is a tool that we use here borough-wide. And there is a global ID that's like attached to every user that is inputting a survey. And so multiple users can't, like, you'll have the same user ID if you do it on your phone or do it on your laptop. So there can't be multiples like that. But as far as AI and all of that, like, I don't know that we went that deep. So I would also agree with Garrett that I would love to add it to like the assessor's package or something like that to make that happen. Yeah, that would be great.
Great. No, really, really great. Mr. Strawn, you have a very impressive team. So thank you. That's all. Thank you.
Okay. Assemblyperson Fauna, did you have a question? No. Okay. Anyone else? Well, Kelsey just meant, yeah, the one about do you agree or disagree? If I was doing that survey and it says deliver high quality services, to me, the borough's two services I think that are most popular for everybody is education and roads. And I don't think in education we're doing high quality. I probably wouldn't get hardly anybody in the borough to say we're delivering high quality for education. And for roads, if their road's not paved, they probably don't think they have high quality in services for a road. So if you do decide to do that, I don't know, I think I would change it or define what high quality is. That's just some comments regarding what I was see. Yes, go ahead, Lynn.
Through the mayor, this is Commissioner McCabe. Thanks for all of your hard work. Having worked on political campaigns, I know that you can target your audience of who will receive the ads on Facebook. So I'm just kind of curious how you targeted people. Did you use zip codes? Did you use other demographics to make it pop up in certain people's feeds? I'm just, but I am thrilled to hear that you are not done. You have more work to do and you're going to be listening to more people. So I'm not accusing you of limiting your scope of who responded by any means,
No.
but I'm just curious how the respondents were targeted.
Through the mayor to Commissioner McCabe. Really good question. So Facebook does have different ways that you can target different people. I did it by radius. So, and you can add in multiple radii. So I just made it so that the buffer zone covered the reaches of the borough, but that it missed Anchorage. You know what I mean? So like I was able to make a buffer using the like Facebook ad like place. I don't know what you call it. So that Anchorage was left out and it cut off, at the Knik River and went up and out. So that's how I did it, was just using the software that Facebook has to do it by radius.
That just brings a little bit more consternation into the whole thing, because I know that their algorithms make certain things go to certain people. So I'm kind of a skeptic.
I mean, and that's wildly out of my, I have no possible control over that. What I do have control over is the radius that I put on our targeted ads. I will say we spent about $30 on it. So we
You get what you pay for.
it wasn't a lot. It wasn't a lot. It was maybe a lunch. I don't know. So yeah, we it wasn't much. I mean, it was really organic the way that it spread. What I found was our community councils were sending it everywhere. I did put it on places like Matt Valley News and different I utilized what we're starting to do a lot in planning is joining a lot of different Facebook groups to spread different messages. So when I did the bike and ped plan, I was in all the bike and ped Facebook groups. And now that I'm doing the comp plan, I'm trying to join as many community groups as I can. And so that's the way that we're trying to organically spread the message, because it means a lot more coming from your neighbor or a person who you trust because you're in the same group than just a random Facebook ad. So we didn't put a bunch of money into doing the random ad. We put a bunch of focus onto getting it out organically and getting people talking to neighbors and real people about it. Yeah.
Was there any way for you to be able to trace to know that one person was doing a survey and they weren't doing it numerous times?
Yes.
Okay.
So that was, like I was saying, our GIS team was in on it and walked me through how that all works. And I can have, if you're interested, I'd be happy to have Kenny work with me to write up something that talks about how we know. But there is each survey has this, what it's called a global ID. And so none of those were reoccurring. They're all individual, distinct.
Okay. Now, when we go to the public meetings and people are saying pros and cons and things like that, what kind of stoppage are we going to have from knowing that they filled out the survey and said that, they were in favor of X, and then they come to the meeting, and then how are we going to know that that person hasn't already filled out the survey and they are saying at the public meeting that they're in favor of X, and so are we adding them to what we have here? So we don't know for sure, then you see what I'm saying?
I'm not totally sure that I do. Can you?
Okay, so here we have roughly 1,400 people.
Yes.
So we go out to the community meetings.
Yes.
And 1,500 people show up.
Here's hoping.
Well, how many people, how then can you check to be sure that 1,500 wasn't the same 1,000 that did this?
Oh, they certainly, once again, I have to focus on what is within my control.
Mm-hmm.
That is completely out of my control.
I know. Yeah.
So Garrett, I think, mentioned it, which was the same people who are taking the surveys, who are showing up to give public testimony, to show up and vote, they're like, a lot of them are the same people because
Right.
not everybody has the time to be super engaged.
Yeah.
So that's where doing things like mailing it out to property owners to make sure it's in their house in front of them. But also to do those pop-up events, go to different, we were having a conversation about it, like showing up where the people are
Right.
instead of asking them to come, because we know
Right.
that there's going to be a certain group of people that kind of are
Right.
involved that way.
Right.
So we're going to do everything we can to reach all of those people. We are not going to take testimony or words that people say in the public meetings and try to do like an apples to apples with the survey. The survey is going to
Okay.
exist on its own. The public meetings are going to exist on its own.
Okay.
Like I've said, there's kind of those themes that are popping up, and that's really what we want to focus on. Not who said what, but like, what are people in general talking about when it comes to land use, when it comes to economic development? What does it mean to say that we're open for business, but not actually be open for business, not actually have people coming and pounding down our doors to start their businesses here?
Mhm.
Like, yeah, so we're just going to try to get as many people as we can. And I bet that a lot of people who took the survey will come to the meetings.
Yeah, right. So that's what I'm
Yes.
concerned about, is that, say, the people that want X, they show up, and in this, it shows up as 55%. The public meetings, the same people come, and that shows up at 55%. And all of a sudden we think, oh, wow, that really is needed. And it really is the fact that it's the same people showing up. So,
Yes.
yeah.
Well, and invite me to all of your networking parties and all of your public events, and we will get as many people as we can to give their input, and so that we can all make better informed decisions. Yeah.
Any other question? Yes.
I have one, Commissioner Cohn. When you were receiving the comment portions, if there were comments, like, I'll give you an example, like for roads, did those comments go to the Public Works or anything, or are you holding on to them?
So through the mayor to Commissioner Cohn, we are holding on to all of the data right now until I'm able to like actually write the report that I'm talking about. I'm almost finished, so it should just be a week or two. And then once we are finished with that, I think it would be I hadn't actually thought about just giving it to Public Works. That seems like a really natural next step. So thank you for that. But yeah, we can do that. Like the comments are, I mean, they're public. They're, anyone can
Right.
read them and all that good stuff. So yeah, we'll definitely, thank you for that. We'll make sure that they get to Public Works.
Thanks.
Yeah, and especially since he said that they could divide it down into the districts. So does the Public Works know certain road service areas that need assistance? Excellent point. Yeah.
Great.
Okay. Well, I think we'll let you go, lady. Thank you. I'm sorry.
Just a
Dee, go
comment.
ahead. Yeah.
Just a comment. When you're looking at the 1% of the population, 114,000, and you're thinking, it reminds me of the founding fathers' comment about we are not a government of the majority. We are a government of the majority who participate. And if we're making any decisions based on 1% of our population, I got a question. Did you guys get this and say, did you think it was going to be a one-off, this thing, to send this thing out and we're going to go to all the data? And I applaud you that you're not doing that, but did you think you were going to get enough response to actually go anywhere with it? Because I don't think we have that. It's interesting, but
Yeah. Through the mayor to Assemblymember McKee. Honestly, I was using the survey as an initial engagement tool. I just wanted to get people talking about the comprehensive plan, thinking about land use, thinking about their neighborhoods and what they enjoy, what they don't enjoy, their local government. I was not expecting to get almost 1,400 respondents, which does make me want to continue to do it to see how many people we can get. I was using it as mostly an engagement tool and something that would kind of give me enough information to start having what I felt like was a little bit more of an educated conversation with the public, especially going into all of our public workshops. So that was the primary reason that we did the survey. I would agree. I would just love to see more people do it. And
Yeah,
so
because when
we'll-
you're, I'm sorry, when you're looking at something like this, basically it's the Z word. I mean, it's the zoning thing, and everybody kind of doesn't say that. They say it behind their hand. But, with 114,000 people, got to do something. But I don't know if there are enough people that would be in favor of that. And what if there aren't? I mean, what if you put this thing back again, and like Ron was talking about, going out to all the property taxpayers, and they say, what does that do to what does that do to this plan you have?
Yeah. So through the mayor, that's a fantastic question. And so one thing that I said earlier was when it comes time to adopting this plan, I do not want it to be my plan.
Yeah.
So I am letting the public guide the conversation, and I'm letting them guide what goes in the plan. I think that I have some ideas of how it might turn out based on the conversations that I've had so far. But the more and more people that get involved, you're absolutely right. It could go totally a different way. And that's going to be okay. We're prepared for that. That's part of the reason why we're doing this plan in-house instead of hiring a consultant, is because I live in the Matsu Borough. I work here. I understand the differences that each distinct community has. So for updating a borough-wide plan, it was really important for us to approach that with somebody who has knowledge of the fact that a one-size zoning code or whatever would, well, A, never pass, but also never work. Like, that is not the approach that we want to take, nor is it the approach that we think we should take. But we are certainly letting the public guide this conversation and acting as facilitators of the conversation and writers of the document.
Yeah, Assemblyperson Venera, go ahead.
I don't know if I'd have to do a resolution or something like that, but if the survey goes back out, I would really insist that it goes to the taxpayers because they're paying the bills. They should have the say. And if you want a true demographic, that would be the only thing I can see that would be fair, for the people, by the people.
Assemblyperson McKee.
Yeah, so based on just going off what you just said, what if it's all said and done, you got everything out there, you've been doing this forever, how long you're planning to do it, and you get like a 13% return of surveys? That's not enough to make a decision on. What will you do?
Well,
Because you just can't have such a wide-ranging plan if you only get 13% of the population that answers. That's totally hypothetical, but philosophically, what do you think?
through the mayor.
Go ahead.
So I guess one thing with that is the survey is not the end all be all, right? So we have, and the property taxpayers, yes, they share the massive burden of funding the government and making sure that the operations work and the services are delivered. But we're also taking into account business owners, commercial development investors, industrial investors, people who are so yes, the property taxes and the property holders need to be have a good voice and a well represented voice. But the survey isn't the only way we're going about that, and neither are the public workshops. So we're also engaging specifically with people in the community, trying to do things, trying to bring their businesses here, but not having the right public facilities to be able to open their businesses and things like that. So if we get, what did you say, 13,000?
I said 13% of the
13%, right? As far as the decisions that we all make as the assembly, as, staff, how do we know that 13% of people are in favor of that anyhow? What we do is we do our best.
Yeah.
And we make sure that we're putting our best foot forward and knowing that we're not going to get 100% involvement on this, because not 100% of borough residents want to be involved in this process. I'm not going to force anybody to do it, and I'm certainly not going to, knock door to door trying to get everybody involved. We don't have the capacity to do that. You're looking at the planning division right now. This is it for us, and the amount of work that we're trying to do is massive. So, yeah, we're just going to make the best comprehensive plan that we can. We're going to do the most amount of public outreach that is feasible for the capacity of our team, and hope that that brings us to a place that provides you all with enough information to make better decisions that are grounded in the public, what the public wants. Yeah.
Further questions or comments? Yes, Assemblyperson Fonoff, go ahead.
Most people, I don't know, this obviously it's only 1% that took the survey. I wanted to know, do you get the sense that more unhappy or disappointed people take the surveys?
Through the mayor, I can't particularly speak to the moods that people are in when they take the survey.
Okay, because this is a little misleading. Like when the taxes, so you have two of them that are in green, and they're the ones that want higher taxes, and we're making them like favorable comments, and the ones that want it lower, the so-called negative comments. So I think just a little bit misleading on that. I want to know, is this what you've done? Obviously, there was a lot of time and took place. Is this costed a lot of additional resources to Borough, to residents, to have the survey completed, money-wise?
Through the mayor. This is well within the scope of the project account that we have for the comprehensive plan. Because we did decide to do the plan in-house and not pay for a consultant company, that actually gives us a little bit more leeway to put more money into public outreach efforts and things like that. So it has just fallen well within the scope of my work and my job description to do something like this.
And is this some of the information that you've taken is going to be used towards the MPO, or this is part of towards putting information related to MPO? Or
Yeah, through the mayor. My only project, now that you all passed the bike and ped plan, thank you for that, is working on the borough-wide comprehensive plan update. So this is all I do for about the next 2 years, or a year and a half, I guess now.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Yes, go ahead, sir.
Commissioner Fernandez here. I just wanted to comment, the survey that was just referred to with the red sections was about increasing taxes. I think it's pretty universal that the majority of people don't like it when taxes go up. I would also ask, what do we know, and you may not even be the right department. I think it might be Department of Elections that would actually know this, but how many Matsu Borough residents participate in the local elections? What percentage?
It really depends.
Yeah.
Last year we had a little over 40%. We have over 90,000 voters.
Okay.
On regular election years, off years that were not with the state, some people disagree with me, but I think it's 16 to 20%.
Okay. So, and that is just to bring like a frame of reference. If our local officials are being elected with those kind of participation numbers, then I think it's reasonable to consider results. And again, I want to commend you guys and encourage you to continue developing your survey methods. I think this is an incredible way for local government to get engagement and input from the local members, right? Taxpayers, yes, priority number one for sure. But I just want to keep encouraging you to keep testing it, keep figuring out, because there's a correct method here and there's a right formula. And the only way you're really going to get there is either by hiring the $1 million experts or trial and error. And you're crushing it. So thank you.
Assemblyperson Fonoff, go ahead.
The quick follow-up, is this setup that you have, would it be available if we are working on legislation or something like that to give you a question, say, hey, put it out there, and within the amount of time we'll get some comments and things like that? Is that something that can be utilized as a tool for us?
Through the mayor. I love where your head's at. I will say, with what we have now, no. But that is fascinating. And I do feel like Manager Brown, who loves dashboards, might it makes me think about what would happen if the Matsu Borough had something on our website where like we could float ideas to people and we could see if they would approve or disapprove of something and have that be kind of a barometer for ideas that the assembly might want to bring forward. So before we would dedicate staff time, before we would do something like that, having a way to test the public waters on whether they want that to be a priority for staff or for the borough or for a resolution to go forward. I think that would be an awesome idea. It just doesn't exist yet.
Okay, I just thinking that using it as a tool, because from my short experience here, I noticed when we have public hearing and we're working on legislation, we're getting a lot of people who are upset with something or some people that are really taking time out of their schedule to come and speak negative about some. But this way, when they're out of the home, of comfort of their home, perhaps we, give them a couple options to vote on, and boom, we kind of have a decent sample and saved a lot of time of 3 minutes per person.
Yeah.
Did you have a question?
I think that's
Two
awesome.
more of a comment. I mean, communications is always difficult. This is the comprehensive plan to guide growth for the borough. So, it affects everybody, whether they participate or not. So I think it's our job as assembly members and planning commissioners to, take what information you're giving us, but that's just one information stream. And our goal as a borough should be to make sure we're reaching all the viewpoints. I mean, that's why when you have a body, you want diverse viewpoints, young, old, retired, business, developer, non-developer, is so that you don't leave somebody out who will be affected by it. So I think, as assembly members, as planning commissioners, we can help you by spreading the word. If we think there's viewpoints that are not being represented that we hear, we can let people know that these meetings are coming up. Just in terms of the form of communication, that Facebook does do algorithms, and it drives me crazy. And the way you set it up is you couldn't do anything more. You just geographically set it up. I know how you did that, but you can't control what Facebook does. And you're getting out. So I think you're doing the best you can in the Facebook framework. I wish there was a way for the borough to allow residents to sign up for email updates, whatever, where we could get the message out to them in an easy way. As much as I would love to mail it to everybody, a lot of people aren't going to notice that or respond or realize the importance of it. I mean, a lot of public process is people don't participate and then they realize at the end, oh, wait, what are you doing? So the more we can make it clear to people, this is really important, and engage them up front, it's not going to be perfect at the end of the day. At the end of the day, there's going to be people who, are going to have strong opinion on one side or the other. So I guess that's just, in terms of somebody who works in the communications field, the more we can do the outreach to make sure that rural's represented, urban's represented, retirees are represented. And then for us as assembly members to realize that we have to take what you give us and then also just think about the borough as a whole, some of those people who might not be speaking up. And when we get to that point, we'll have to figure out what it needs to look like.
Further questions or comments? Do you have?
Actually, go ahead.
Okay, go ahead, sir.
You got quite the hot topic tonight.
Yeah, I'm excited. I wasn't expecting this.
I'll try and keep my questions brief. I'm just curious. So there was talk about sending out the survey again through getting it to the taxpayers. Would that be the same survey? Would we be adding it to the results that we already have? And if so, how do we verify that it's not the same people who spoke on that issue?
Yeah. Through the mayor to Commissioner Shane, really good questions. So as far as verifying if they've taken it or not, that would be really difficult because we didn't ask for any personal identifiers. And when we asked where people live, it was like an open-ended question. We didn't even like pre-populate things. People could write down their street address. They could write down what milepost, like, so I don't know how we would be able to do that. If we did send it out again, this is just like thinking off the cuff here, but I think that we would keep the questions the exact same, just so that the data would be like, it would be the same. We could know with that we were asking the same questions and be able to compare the data and have that all match perfectly. That being said, as I mentioned earlier, there are some things that I think could be improved upon in the survey. So that makes me a little more inclined to maybe do something different and have the questions be close enough to the original survey so that we're still gauging the same sentiment. We're still talking about land use in neighborhoods and things like that, but maybe we ask it differently. But even with that, you run the risk of just not being able to compare the two data sets together. And so as far like, we wouldn't be able to say 66% of all respondents said this because the questions might be different. And that, so yeah, I don't know yet.
So if we were to send out this other survey, say it was modeling close to that, and I don't like saying this because I feel like it would, you've obviously put a lot of work into this report, and so I wouldn't want to take away from that. But at the same time, to get good data, would it be better to have that survey analyzed separately from the original one?
Through the mayor, I see what you're saying. And I think I think that it would be okay to analyze them separately. And certainly if every property taxpayer received it and even, 1% of those, or if 2% took that, then we would have at least more information to go off of than the 1% that have taken the current one. So I think it could also depend on how many people end up taking it. Because if we got a significant number of people that took it, that we know are property tax owners, not like, we wouldn't really have to compare them. We could just use that data set too.
Okay.
But
Thank you for all your hard work. Appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. That was a great question.
Assemblyperson Bernier, go ahead.
Okay. So I know business owners and stuff like that, most of them are property owners for the most part, right? But if we did, do you have enough money in the budget, your budget, for a postage stamp?
I'm sorry, for what?
To mail these?
Through the mayor. Mailing to the entire borough.
To the, not the
Outside,
population, the taxpayers.
Well,
And
right.
We've got multiple properties, so we'd be getting one versus 12 or.
But we would also have to mail several to does only the property owner get to vote, or what about the people in the household of the property owner? You know what I mean? Like, would we have to?
Whoever's paying the taxes, who's supporting this?
Yeah. But I mean, sorry, through the mayor, that's also something that we need to consider, though, is that there are people here who are renters who have property tax built into their rents. So while the owner of the property is owns the land and is paying the taxes, they're having they're building it into renters' rent. And they're also here and they're using services and they're expecting and enjoying a quality of life that we have to consider. Yes, they have a priority because they are funding the government.
Yeah.
But they aren't the only people who live here. And it's our job as a government to provide services for everyone who lives in the Mat-Su Borough. So they should be a good representation of a survey or of the public, but they are not the only members of the public. And so we just need to remember that when we're thinking about whose voice to listen to, because you all represent more people than property owners. And it's important to remember
yeah.
that. Yeah.
Further comments, statements, questions? Okay, well, I think we'll let you off the hot seat. Is about everybody ready for a break? I see people getting up and leaving and stuff. So let's take a 15-minute break and come back at 8:30. Still missing one of your board members, ma'am. Down here, Fernandez. Is he? Oh, he's not there. I couldn't quite see if he was there or just sitting in the back of the, but yeah, you know, if he's sitting there he comes there.
I love sunflowers.
Here he comes.
Sunflowers. They're kind of in the style of Vengo.
The next item on our agenda is Water Setback Advisory Board update. Go ahead, sir.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Alex Strawn, the Planning Director for the Borough. This is going to be quick, I promise. Yes. Depending on how many questions you have, right?
You guys have already had 9/10 of the meeting. Yeah,
right. So, I mean, first of all, I do want to just agree with Commissioner Fernandez that we do have an excellent planning division here. That they're all smart and full of energy and hardworking, and they're a cohesive team. And a lot of times, I'm just really trying to keep up with them, but they have courage and they have, I think they're a great team for this community to really come to work and think about the future and start planning for it. So it's really great to work with them. So our Water Body Setback Advisory Board has been formed. Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of the Assembly, for filling those positions. We did schedule our first meeting November 1st at 6 p.m. It's going to be in the employee break room, which is right there. We will have a telephonic option so people can call in using the Synexus program. For members who are actually on the board, we will have a Teams presence, although we're asking that people try to really make it in person because it's more effective that way. Let's see, we've sent notification to the community councils. This will be published in the Frontiersman, October 5th or 25th and 27th. We do have a website that is going to have an option if people want to stay involved and know when the next meeting is and get all the presentation material and just know when changes occur. They can click a button and sign up for notifications. So we'll compile a big email notification list. So the first meeting is going to be, we're going to be sort of introducing ourselves. I'm going to give, I've been swimming in this stuff for years and years and years and dealing with the history of water body setbacks and doing variances and legal nonconforming. And I get an opportunity to share my knowledge of the history of water body setbacks, all the nuances in our code, to identify what the problem is that we're trying to solve and hopefully develop, we're going to elect a chair, a vice chair. We're going to develop homework for not only the board members, but for myself. What information do we want to bring to the next meeting? Do we want to have guest speakers? I'm sure we're going to have DEC, even though they don't have a spot on the board, they're going to have a presence. We're going to really ask that they do have a presence, that they share their knowledge and get their perspective. And hopefully we come up with a solution that accomplishes the goals of protecting water quality and hopefully providing relief for the people who are built too close. But we'll see. I'm not going to try to sway the process. I'm just going to facilitate it and see where it comes out. So.
Okay. Anybody have any questions? Okay. Thank you, sir.
Thanks.
Oh, yes.
Radio, maybe advertising on some of the radio stations as far as getting the word out.
Okay, we can do that. Yep.
Okay. Any other comments?
And so can just folks come and go back there to the break room and listen in and
Yeah, these meetings will be open to the public. We will have a portion of the agenda for public testimony. So we did schedule this room. I hope it's big enough. We don't know how many people are going to show up and testify. We talked about having them sit at the dais, but I think for the first meeting where people are getting to know each other and trying to work as a group, it's maybe not best to have them sitting at the dais, and even though you'd have this whole room available. So I guess if there's going to be a lot of people that are going to comment, hopefully they call in because there's probably room for a good 20 people to sit back there, but it could get pretty cozy. Yeah.
I'd like to ask the attorney and the clerk a question. We need to caution the assembly about that meeting, right? if more than 3 assembly people would come. Right? So does everybody on the assembly hear that? That we can't have more than 3 assembly people show up for that meeting. Yeah, yeah, even if you don't talk to each other, because that's a violation of the open meetings law. Because you guys will be making decisions on that afterwards. So, yeah.
Madam Mayor,
I don't let the attorney give you, and the clerk give you instructions.
So the Open Meetings Act prevents a quorum of the body from collectively considering items that you're empowered to act upon outside of an advertised meeting. And this is not advertised as an assembly meeting, it's advertised as the advisory board meeting. Your legally safest way to proceed is to not participate and wait until they're done. If you want to participate, you just need to make sure there's not more than 3 of you there. There's a case out of Anchorage that said fact-finding and participating in meetings that are less than a quorum, when you're gathering information to get all the information to what you're then going to vote on later, is still a violation.
So participating to me means I'm going to jump in and say something. So if I just sat there quietly?
No, it's your
that's-
presence, your
I'm sorry.
presence.
Oh, just the presence is participation. Okay.
Because fact-finding is covered under the Open Meetings Act.
Okay.
Madam Mayor?
What if we all watched it on? Sorry. What if everybody watched it online? Wouldn't that be?
Again, I suppose, I suppose the clerk could run a 3 or more ad, but I guess I would back up and say if there is a quorum or more of the assembly that wants to participate, why have an advisory board? Why not just do it yourself?
But I mean, as far as just listening in.
Is that a motion to reconsider there?
I mean, really, one of
Yeah.
the reasons for the advisory board was to get diverse viewpoints with people with expertise, with assistance from the planning department, to come up with their recommendations to then present to you. You will have the ultimate say on it.
Madam Mayor,
Assembly person hours.
is it going to be recorded? Because we can all watch the planning commission meetings. If it's going to be recorded, we just don't attend, but we listen to the recording afterwards. That's acceptable.
Yeah.
Okay. Alrighty.
We will be sure to record the meetings.
Sorry, I made your report longer than what you intended it to be. I wanted to be, when they started talking, I wanted to be sure that we had the things covered. Okay. Alrighty. Thank you, sir. I think that's, yeah. Everybody okay? Okay. The next item on our agenda is transportation projects update.
All right. Good evening, Madam Mayor, Assembly,
Cole.
Planning Commission. My name is Cole Branham, and I'm the Project Management Division Manager. So I'm going to give you an update on a few of the transportation projects ongoing and upcoming. First, I'm going to talk about the Community Transportation Program, also known as CTP, and the Transportation Alternatives Program. So the borough nominated 4 projects for these DOT programs, 2 CTP and 2 TAP projects. The 2 CTP projects are the Selden Road, are both on Selden Road, I guess. Combined, they span from Wasilla-Fishhook Road to Lucille Street. Snow Goose Drive is the dividing point of those 2 projects. And then the 2 TAP projects are Palmer-Fishhook Separated Pathway from Trunk Road to Edgerton Parks Road, and Springer Loop Pathway from Glen Highway to Cope Industrial Way. DOT also nominated 3 projects in the Mat-Su Borough. 1 for the CTP program to upgrade Bogard Road from Inkstrom Road to Earl Drive. And 2 TAP programs. The first is a pathway on Selden Road from Wasilla-Fishhook to Bogard. And the second would connect onto the MSB's TAP nomination on Palmer-Fishhook for a pathway from Trunk Road to the Glen Highway. The committee responsible for evaluating these projects has not completed that effort, but they're expected to complete that by the end of this year. Next, I'll talk about TIP 23. I'll keep it pretty brief. So the TIP 23 project or package includes 17 projects, estimated to be about $77 million. There is a 50% match requirement on that. And the TIP 23 package will be on the November 7th ballot as Proposition 1. All right, next I'm going to give you guys a quick update on the TIP 21 package and the construction of those projects. And then I'll dive into a little more detail onto one of the TIP 21 projects, the Ingstrom to Trunk Road connector project. So we have several projects in construction this year. The first one I'll talk about is the Mat-Su School Borough or School District pedestrian projects. These pathways are all based on the Safe Routes to School document. We have 5 sites on that. So that's Big Lake, Colony, Larson, Denina Reddington, and Talkeeton Elementary School. Of those sites, 3 of them we have paths installed now, and the contractor is working to substantially complete all of those sites by fall. Winter's coming quick, so we'll make a judgment call to ensure our quality standards are met if they're going to complete those this year. But regardless, final completion is set for June of next year on all of those pathways. Next, we have the Sherry Lake, Karen, and King Arthur project in Houston. That project is expected to be about halfway complete this year. They'll shut down for the winter and start back up next spring. And that's on par with what we anticipated for that project. We also have the Trunk Road Connector project, which we ended up combining with the Mat-Su Central School project. In doing that, we were able to reduce the construction costs nearly in half of what the engineer's estimate was for that project. And they've started construction out there for that, and that's anticipated to be complete next fall. So we'll get that road in place and complete before the new school opens, and the additional traffic is added to the roads in those areas. For the 2024 anticipated construction, we have 6 projects. The first 2 are up in the Caswell area. We have the Caswell Lakes Road paving project and the Hidden Hills reconstruction phase 1. We plan to combine the construction of those projects together when we put that out for construction bids. We also have the Lakes Boulevard project. We've worked through the U.S. Army Corps permitting process on that and we're wrapping up the design, and we'll go to construction in 2024. Next, we have the Smith Road extension, upgrade, and pathway. The design of that project is nearly complete and on track for 2024 construction. Last, for the 2024 construction, we have the Point McKenzie Road upgrade. So our design team is working hard on that one to get us to a point where we can advertise phase 1 construction of that project for next year. That will depend on some right-of-way conflicts being resolved for us to get to that point. Then for the 2025 and 2026 anticipated construction projects, we have the Fern Street upgrade and pathway, Lucille Street upgrade and pathway, and the Texal extension upgrade and pathway. And all those projects are represented on the TIP 21 roadmap, which was included in your guys' packets this evening. So next, I'm going to transition to the Ingstrom to Trunk Road project. So when this project was first presented to Public Works, there was very little information known about that. So we started the project with a reconnaissance engineering report to evaluate the alternatives and assess the environmental impacts. So those impacts include cultural resources, fish habitat, floodplains, migratory birds, navigable waters, noise, wetlands, and right-of-way. We evaluated the when evaluating the alternatives, it's important to define the purpose and need of a project. So the purpose of this project is to improve safety and increase the capacity of the road network in the Fishhook area by providing an alternate route between Ingstrom Road and Trunk Road with a 20-year design life. The need of this project is to improve connectivity and reduce congestion to meet current and future traffic volumes, which are constricted by the Fishhook and North Lake areas' limited collector level network. So there are currently no facilities that connect Ingstrom Road to Trunk Road. DOT does have a project to construct a roundabout at the Bogard, Ingstrom, and Green Forest intersection. The intersection improvements will help with safety and congestion, but they do not solve the issue of connectivity in that area. There are numerous planning documents that talk about a connection between Trunk Road and Ingstrom Road. Those include the 2022 Official Streets and Highways Plans, the Long Range Transportation Plan, and then there are some studies of the Fishhook area traffic. In the reconnaissance engineering report, they addressed 3 alternatives. The first one would be a no-build alternative, and then we have a north alignment and a south alignment. There's a map in your guys' packet that shows both the alignments, so you can visualize those. So the no-build alternative was ruled out because it didn't meet the purpose and need of the project. The south alignment is just under 1 mile, and the north alignment is just under 2 miles. The southern alignment is separated from Bogard Road by about a half mile, and the northern alignment is separated from Bogard Road by about 1.5 miles. So that additional separation has better benefit for connectivity and use of that road. So neither alignment has right-of-way along it. Obviously, the longer route will impact more properties than the southern shorter route would. There's relatively low density of development in this area currently, but just to the north is the Wolf Lake area, which has grown rapidly in the last few years. There's been a lot of development there. So as development continues, the acquisition of right-of-way will become more costly and complicated for these routes. Both routes end up crossing Wasilla Creek. The northern route does have some additional tributaries that it does cross. Planning level cost estimates were prepared for both these alternatives. The south alignment was estimated to be between $8 to $10 million, and the northern alignment was estimated to be between $19 and $21 million. Neither of these estimates include intersection improvements at the Trunk Road intersection if they're required by DOT. So that'd be like a signal or roundabout. We'll have to get through that process with DOT if we get that far. So we took all this information into consideration and some more from the reconnaissance engineering report and compared that to the purpose and need of this project. And so Public Works recommendation is proceed with the preliminary engineering of the northern alignment. The northern alignment will provide a major collector separated from Bogard by about 1.5 miles. It aligns with the collector road connection north of Walby Lake, which is shown on the official streets and highway plans. So that'd be a 4-way intersection on Trunk Road there. Traffic data suggests that a significant amount of Engstrom Road's traffic comes from the Wolf Lake area. And so commuters are more likely to prefer a direct east-west route than a left-hand turn less than a half mile from Bogard Road and the proposed roundabout. The north alignment also provides a practical alternative for residents, emergency vehicles, and school buses impacted by emergencies and other events. Engstrom Road has historically been affected by snow drifting. There's been recent road closures on Engstrom Road near Cornelius Lake and the farms located near the southern alignment there. So the northern route would provide alternate access point for folks when those sorts of events happen. I guess I want to convey to you guys too that this is a decision to move forward with preliminary engineering on this, not necessarily a decision to construct this alternative. There's been a lot of development in this project since you guys first talked about this and presented it. So I just want to take the time to explain some of that to you guys. And at this point, I'll open it up to questions.
Any questions? Yes, Assemblyperson McKee.
Is there public access to Wolf Lake? Because I can tell you, I used to take my kids there 30 years ago, and now I drove around for an hour and a half and all these little driveways. I could never get to the lake. Is there?
The lake itself, I actually am not sure if there is public access to Wolf Lake.
It's stocked by the Fish and Game, as I understand it. So I'm thinking there really ought to be. So where will I find that out? Because you're going to be doing all this work here for kind of a specialized group. I'm not sure I'm for it, but go ahead. Tell me how I can find that out.
I mean, we can look that up on our parcel viewer. There should be information on that. I can report back to you on that.
Thank you.
Any further questions or comments? Okay, thank you,
All right,
sir.
thank you.
Oh. Assemblyperson T, go ahead.
No, I'm just looking here at the, so let's see, we go down Bogard and you go Engstrom, and then this is where you're going to put in, right here on this Bogard and Engstrom is where you're going to put the roundabout?
DOT is putting a roundabout at Engstrom and Bogard, correct?
Okay, so then if we went further and then we hit Trunk Road and then we made a left, this yellow line is where you want to put a new road?
So the yellow line represents the southern alignment, and the purple line represents the northern alignment. And then those red lines are alternate routes for the southern alignment. That's just considering crossing Wasilla Creek in the floodplain. But the two alignments that are primarily looked at is the yellow and purple.
So, and the yellow one is the one that is the preferred?
No, the purple route.
Oh, you want to go way over here?
Correct.
And how come, is it okay that I asked, how come we want to go on this purple one versus the yellow one?
Yeah, no, that's fine. So there's a couple items there. So the separation from Bogard Road is one of them. So by the time you get to, the majority of the traffic's coming from the Wolf Lake area, which is to the north there. So by the time most of that traffic gets there, they're only a half mile from the roundabout and Bogard Road itself. And then they would have to take a left turn, which is a conflict movement, to get onto that southern alignment there in yellow. And the northern alignment there in purple, folks coming from the Wolf Lake area would be able to take and make a through movement. So it'd be an east-west movement and get directly to Trunk Road. And our traffic data shows that the majority of the traffic is coming from the Wolf Lake area to the north. So commuters and others would be able to access Trunk Road directly with that route.
So the purple line that comes onto Trunk Road, you still make a left onto Trunk, yeah? And you make a left on the red road or the orange road or yellow road.
Correct. You would make a turn at Trunk Road, regardless of the alternative. Ingstrom Road, though, when you come off of Ingstrom Road, that could be at that intersection. It could be the through movement where the north-south leg of Ingstrom Road would be stop controlled, and that would encourage most of the traffic to go to Trunk Road instead of south on Ingstrom.
Thank you.
Sorry, Commissioner Shane here. And on that northern segment, as I understand it, I've traveled that road a decent amount of times, especially in unfavorable weather conditions. That southern route, from what I can see, is right in the heartbeat of where you get those big windstorms and those big drifts that completely block off the road. So not saying that I would be in favor of put the road in or not put the road in, but if you were to put the road in, I'm guessing for an alternative route, that purple one would probably at least make the most sense as far as being an alternative route for those residents up there. Is that kind of your thoughts?
That is what we've taken away from the reconnaissance study and what we want to look into further with the preliminary engineering. But that is why we want to move, part of the reason why we want to move forward with the northern route.
One more here.
Go ahead.
So when I'm looking at Engstrom, this map here,
yep.
and I'm going up there and I'm looking at either that says 3766 or E768 or something. And to the right of that, it looks like, is that radio tower or that radio station? Is that what that is?
Yep, that's at that intersection there of the southern alignment.
Mm-hmm. And then on the that was the left side of the road, and then on the right side, that's this guy's farm or something, huh?
Yes.
Yep. And so that yellow line goes right through his farm.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. And has anybody approached him with buying that?
No. So we've had limited public involvement at this stage. That would be part of the preliminary engineering. There'd be much more public involvement, reaching out to the property owners and talking to them about this project and what we would need for that. Public Works.
And so on this the purple line, the north alignment, like you already said, it was twice as long, right? Is this all public, private owned land, or is this public land?
It is all private owned land.
It's all privately owned.
On both alignments.
Yeah, but the yellow one's half as long, right?
Correct.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
But I think, as Cole said, with the yellow line, you don't really take care of the wintertime stuff that you have on Cornelius and Nicholson Lake, right? By the yellow line. The people above Cornelius and Nicholson Lake still haven't been addressed.
Yeah,
Right.
that area is the area that's prone to snow drifting and
Yeah.
issues like that. So.
Right, yeah. And then you have that, what is it, Aspen Ridge? Is that the large Jess Hall up above the purple line?
Yeah, I'm not sure of that, but yeah, that parcel above is being currently developed.
Yeah, yeah. So that would take care of that traffic from there then, right? Yeah.
So as you say that, Mayor, when we hit that purple line and we go all the way to the left, there's this blue square in there that kind of it blocks the vision of what that picture is. Does that block of land also look like the block that's down here to the left on the bottom of the page? Is that what that block looks like?
Yes, that area is all developed, if that's what you're asking.
Yeah, that's what
It's
I'm
full,
asking.
It's full of
Like, is it-
housing.
Or is this, or was this purple line to come in and then make a left and then come back to all the population? But no, there's actually people up here too that it's serving, huh?
Yeah, that is, that's part of the Wolf Lake area, and there's other subdivisions up there, but that's one of the areas that's been rapidly growing the last few years. So there is a lot of traffic that's coming off of that, and that is part of what's causing the congestion and traffic safety issues at the Bogard-Ingstrom intersection.
Yeah, because that one road is Ingstrom, and that intersection is feeding all of that.
Correct.
Yeah, so I get it. I get it. Okay.
Yeah, and I think
Thank you.
I think the subdivision that is in the vicinity of the purple line is not fully developed yet, right? They're actively developing that, and they have a lot more houses to put up there. Yeah. Yeah, 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 yeah.
This square is where you can't see the development really.
Mhm.
It's going to look like this lower one. If it doesn't now, it will shorten.
Yeah.
So that road makes sense to come up in there and you go right order.
Now, the only other question that I have, and I think they're both Trunk and Palmer Fish Hook are state, is that correct, Cole?
Trunk is state road, and you said Palmer Fish Hook? Yes.
Yeah.
Both state roads.
Because I was just thinking about if you did the purple, but people would turn left on Trunk Road, that intersection there at Trunk Road and Palmer Fish Hook is very busy. So we'd probably at some time need to start talking to the highway department about what they're going to do, knowing how long it's taken them on Ingstrom.
I haven't seen anything in writing, but I have
Yeah.
heard talk about the state making some improvements to that intersection. I don't know where that's at currently, but
Yeah, yeah. When we came back from Government Peak the other day, came through that intersection, that's pretty busy right there with that. It has that big gas station there, probably. And so, and as things develop more and more up Hatcher's Pass, people probably could be, on that purple line would be turning left, or the yellow line also would be turning left and going to Hatcher's and stuff. So.
yeah, and that'll be part of our study, going forward. We'll have to look at the traffic and the impact, and that will dictate what intersection improvements we have to do at Trunk Road.
Yeah, right. Thank you. Any other questions? Yes, Assembly Person Nowers, go ahead.
I'm really glad you asked about that Palmer Fish Hook intersection because that's already, you've got a curve there pretty close to it. There's a new subdivision that's been permitted to go in not far from that intersection. You got the gas station, so people are pulling in and out of that. So, yeah, I think those two things need to be looked at together, and we can't let Palmer Fish Hook get as dangerous as we've allowed Bogard-Ingstrom. I really think that has, that's the classic sad example of the growth that's happened out here, and it's caused people to be severely injured. And I think there's been some fatalities there at that intersection. Anybody who drives that road will see that, especially at school time. That 19 to 21 million estimate, does that include the right-of-way purchase?
Yes, that includes the right-of-way purchase. The only thing that didn't include was an intersection at Trunk Road, just depending on what's required.
Okay. Gotcha. And I can see why you would think that might be a better option than you're looking at the yellow, and if somebody's come all the way down Engstrom Road, they might they like the shortest path. So I see the human nature would be just to continue down to that Bogart Engstrom and continue to clog up that intersection. So
yeah, and I would add too, Engstrom Road's got those two basically 90-degree curves there that are kind of dangerous. And if we made that the through movement, that would eliminate one of those, and that intersection would be stop controlled for the north-south.
Thanks.
Okay, further question? Yes, Assembly Person 2.
I don't know if this, so since we're talking about this, where that, the tower, the radio station is, or whatever that is, I would like to see if the borough would encourage this, the landowner on the other side to allow the maintenance department to put up snow fence. 20 years ago, they didn't let me do it, and they haven't let them do it. And so they end up with that huge wind drift there. And it's a pain. But that farmer or whatever, that landowner, he won't let it happen. So I'd encourage somebody from the borough staff to go over there and help that out.
The times that I can't say I've been out there the last year or two, but it seems like there used to be a snow fence there. Yeah. And I don't know exactly what is going to be happening. That's Havemeister's dairy farm there that's been there since 1935 or something like that. But the rumor is, rumor, underline it, is about where that yellow line is coming out, that there's been a developer that is very much interested in that section and would have a big subdivision in there. Yeah. But I don't know that the estate has been settled or anything. So.
Well, that would definitely stop the snow.
Pardon?
That would definitely stop the snow.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you, sir.
Yep.
The next item is the Pittman Power Improvement Project update. And go ahead.
I didn't do it. Huh. Yeah. All right. All right. Good evening. My name is Jennifer Castro with Matanuska Electric Association. And I will say that I was sad to see that reliable power wasn't one of the reasons why people like living in the Mat-Su Borough. But I was happy to see that power lines weren't a reason why people don't like living in the borough. So I'll take that as a win. And I'll also take that as MEA employees did not respond to your survey. So segueing into this project update, I think it's important for us to come update this body because this is a very significant project. And what makes it so significant for the borough specifically is because it is outside of the Palmer and Wasilla core areas. So this makes it like super borough special in that kind of way. But this will be the biggest project that MEA has done since building our power plant in Eklutna in 2015. So it is a big deal and a lot of work has gone into where we are at this point. And then there's things happening and occurring as a result of this project that I know the Planning Commission and the borough is also having to consider in ordinances and in other forms of how we plan and build the future of the borough. So I just wanted to start, and I promise I will try to keep this to 10 to 15 minutes at most, but just start at the very beginning of how this project even came to be. And so it all started back in 2020 when we did a 5, 10-year, 15-year analysis of what our power infrastructure looks like matched up against our population. And we all know that the borough is the fastest growing and the only growing region left in the state.
but looking more specifically within that to say, where are the fastest areas growing within the borough, and what kind of existing power infrastructure do we have there? And what we found is this map and this need where Fishhook is the fastest growing area in the valley, and Meadow Lakes was also another fastly growing area in the valley. And on average, the MEA has been installing about 1,200 to 1,400 new electric services per year overall. So we see the growth, you see the growth in different ways, but that's how we can really feel the growth is through the new electric service installs. So what we found is we have big population growth in these areas, but we don't have anything there to help serve and provide power to that existing load. Nonetheless, any future load growth that's anticipated, and we all know that over the next 10 years, we're anticipating even more tens of thousands of people moving out here and calling this place their home. So we identified a need, not a want, a need that we need to have more power infrastructure, specifically 2 new substations to build and a transmission line to carry that higher load of power from place to place, and then connect all of that into our system. And as a cooperative, a community built and led cooperative, we know and we have learned from past projects that we needed to start this with our community, that we were not going to just go start doing, engineering design work and get to a certain point and then say, hey, stakeholders, project stakeholders, hey, residents, now tell us what you think about this. We were like, nope, we are definitely going to start from the very beginning with the community that was going to be most impacted by this project. So we also made sure that with our public involvement process that we provided lots of examples, especially for visual learners, to help them understand what this project is in terms of transmission lines, because that word alone can freak a lot of people out. We drive down the scenic Seward Highway and see these massive intertie transmission lines, and they're like, whoa, 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 you're not putting that here, are you? No, not at all, right? So this is an example, a before and after that we created for a visual example to share with stakeholders so they could understand. The top is an example of the existing distribution lines, and below is what it looks like with the type of transmission lines that we would be putting in for this type of project. So it's not as high of a transmission line that we see in other projects and types of transmission, but this is what we have in existing areas along like Bogard, KGB, other places where you see this type of transmission. So we had an extensive public involvement process. Like I said, we were like, we're starting all of this from the very beginning with our community. We spent about 1.5 years working with the community to put together all of the information, all of their feedback, all of their input to help us come up with the best route option. And we know that it's not going to make everybody happy, and there was no golden ticket route by any means, but we were going to try to get as close to that as possible that we could while fulfilling our duty to provide reliable and affordable power to our members. And so this is just a list here. These are all the different meetings. These are just the meetings that we had over that 1.5 years with the community councils, public hearings, open houses, all of those things. And so we were very busy trying to get as much engagement and public outreach that we could for this project. And like I said, we started with that blank map and said, help us figure out where to go. Help us decide how we get from point A to point B and connect everything together, community. Another really helpful thing that we did with this project is we put together a focus group that was created with stakeholders representing specific organizations. So for the Mat-Su Borough, we had Alex Strawn that was on our focus group, and that was amazing to have his input and feedback. But also we asked each community council to designate someone from their community council to provide and share information with us. And as we know, as the borough is growing, not all information is already on a public record. So take, for instance, a private airstrip. We might not find that in some type of public borough record. And so we needed the help of this focus group and these representatives of these specific groups to give us that information that we might not be able to see or find just through public record searches and other analysis and research that we were able to do. So this focus group was very significant in helping us see what we couldn't see necessarily from a project development standpoint. So after about 6 months of working with the community and saying, hey, like, tell us what is most important to you. What do you want to make sure that we do not go through with a transmission line? And you can probably guess it, my backyard. I don't want it to impact my home or my residence, other existing structures. But of course, there were other things that were very important to folks too. Trails, schools, roadways, or airstrips. And so after we took all of that sensitivity data, we compiled it onto this one map to get a better picture of, well, what are our options? And as you can see, like, it's hard. Like draw a line on this map and tell me where I have to go, right? Where I'm not going to impact or affect some type of high sensitivity area. And so when we did this and we were able to create this visual after about 6 months into our study, what we did notice was the most blue area with moderate sensitivity was up in that kind of northern region and then coming down over into that Church Road-ish area. And so when this study area actually started, this map actually was pulled down a little bit. And so the public feedback that we had gotten after our first open house was like, hey, like, we noticed that there's really like nowhere to go. Could you actually think outside of the box? Literally think outside of the lines? And can you look at what the options are in that northern area where we're noticing less existing residences, less structures already there? And we said, sure, absolutely. Like, that's a great idea. I don't see why not. And so then we spread our siting and studying area up north and started looking at that and impacts in that area and compiling all of that sensitivity data there. So we analyzed over 90 different route links and options, and then kept bringing down all of those different options and coming up with the best two options that we could, using those high sensitivity factors as well as costs, miles of right of way that needed to be cleared, and other important factors. And so this is where, about after 9-10-ish months, we ended up with these two different route options on how to get from point A to point B. And so we broke that down even further. And I know that there's been different comment continuously about cost being the driving factor. And cost, I can tell you, is not the only sole or driving factor of this whole route. And it's going back to what the community told us that was most important to them. And again, it's their existing homes, their existing structures, and making sure that we have the least amount of impact to those. 67% of MEA's customer base, ratepayer base, is residences. We are a residential utility primarily, right? So when we were deciding on the different ways to go in the overall route, you can see these comparisons. So that first section, looking at the cost breakdown, there's about a $1.2 million difference estimated cost between going those two different ways. But then if you look, we see about the similar number of parcels being crossed, and then miles of new right-of-way. If we were to go straight, we'd only have to clear about 1.4 new miles of right-of-way. The other one was going to be about 4, and about the same amount of residences that would be within 75 feet of the line. Now, this is where it was like, I don't think the data could speak more clearly. It's this part of it. And it's this part of it too, that this voice isn't being represented in the public feedback that we're getting today regarding the future ordinance and how we plan out these projects in the transmission line. But when you look at whether we should go north or south and what kind of impact that would have, if we were to go down North Wasilla-Fishhook Road, we were going to be impacting 41 residences that would have been 75 feet within of that line. The other part of that too is if you look at the number of parcels crossed, 228 parcels crossed going down North Wasilla-Fishhook compared to the 53 parcels that are crossed going up that northern route. And then, of course, yes, there is the cost difference, $4 million. And spread that across all the costs that we share as a co-op and ratepayers together, that is something that, of course, we have to consider, is the feasibility of the project and those impacts. But the biggest impact to us was to what the community told us was most important to them. And again, it's their existing homes and residences. And so if we were to just for a second, let's pretend flip and said, hey, yeah, we're going to go down North Wasilla Fishhook Road. Can you imagine those 41 residences showing up and be like, explain to me MEA and justify to me MEA why you chose the more expensive route, the route that has more impacts to homes and residences and taxpayers in that regard, and crosses more pieces of property. I really don't know what to say. And if I were to say, well, view shed was important in an ordinance, I'm not sure if that's good enough either. And so I think moving forward, as we consider an ordinance and how we go about these projects and public process and outcomes, that it's really important to take into consideration all of the other things that were important to the community besides just view shed. And the reason why you're getting that is because it's coming from one point of view, one perspective, one or two perspectives from this project. And so we have a lot more data and input that we can share of what was important to our community members when developing this project. And then the last part of this, and this is where, it gets a little tricky in deciding things, but again, considering the parcels that are crossed, new miles of right of way, the residences were pretty similar, but the costs, there was a significant cost difference in this part or portion and in the Meadow Lakes area and community. And during the appeals process, which is something I'll expand in just a second, but this was where the Meadow Lakes Community Council reached out to us and were like, hey, we really don't want this to impact our senior housing development or future plans for our senior housing. And we were like, hey, you know what? No problem. Like, we can totally work on any mitigation efforts during the design phase. And so that's like another important consideration in the ordinance process, is that a lot of those mitigation efforts and things that we can do to help eliminate public concerns, such as, new ATV traffic or other things, those come out in steps down the road in the design process or the design phase. But we have to have like a route, a path to go down first before we can get to that design phase. So that's also something that's really tricky to work out and negotiate in a process of creating a conditional use permit in an ordinance for this type of stuff. So just putting that out there. So this is our project update, and this is our map of where we are today. And we had submitted our decisional document to the borough last year, spring, May 2022. And all of that was reviewed and approved. And so now we are in the design phase and the right-of-way acquisition phase, and we still have to go through all the permitting and U.S. Corps of Engineers and all of those same requirements to do all of this. And so what we have done this year is a lot, but we've also acquired the substation site properties and locations, and we've shared this information with both community councils as well, because it's important for them to know where you're putting that substation in our area. And, as people buy properties, sell homes, and decide where they want to go, it's important that they know this information and they have this information when they're making those decisions. So we have purchased a 40-acre parcel off of North Church Road in Champaign. I love that street name, Champaign. And so we'll be using 5 acres of that for substation development. And then the remaining acreage we'll be using to store all of the materials and equipment that will be necessary for constructing that 20-mile approximately transmission line connecting into those 2 new substations. And then most recently, we acquired the Fishhook area substation site. And this is a 5-acre parcel that is off of New Hope Farm Road and East Heavenly Circle. And just looking at a timeline for, construction and development, we don't even anticipate actually building anything or constructing anything until the summer of 2025. We imagine and anticipate that acquiring rights of way and going through design and permitting and all these other things are going to take plenty of time and us well into next year before we actually construct anything. But we will be starting down in the Meadow Lakes area first of this project development, and then moving and working our way up into that Fishhook area, and then building that substation to hopefully complete this project out by the end of 2028 is our goal at this point in time. So we've also done it in this way so that we're spreading out the costs each year so that it doesn't show up in some dramatic way to our ratepayers, when you do it all at once type of thing. So we've been very cognizant of that and trying to make sure, even working with inflation and global supply chain costs and all of those types of things, to really try to keep this project on time, on target, but considering, you know, impacts to our members as a whole and the community as a whole, and then making sure that we're working with, you know, borough and planning and that we're keeping everybody informed and up to date, because that's really important too. And we are still taking feedback from the public. We still have this webpage, project webpage that we're updating. We have an email that people can still submit feedback to, because the design phase is where we can really get down one-on-one with property owners and say, hey, like, do we have an option of moving the line across the street and going up this way? Or, you know, so there's still a lot of mitigation opportunities, and there's still a lot of opportunities for the public to work with us, and so that we can try to come up with the best design options that's going to have the least impacts to our residents. And so we know we're not going to make everybody happy, but we're doing our best that we can to provide reliable power and to make sure that we have power to support not only just the existing load, but the projected load that's coming in the future as our area grows. And then the only other thing to consider with the ordinance is that you need transmission for economic development. And when you're looking at like a great port expansion project, you're going to, in an industrial development, you need transmission level power to move that and support that type of development and that type of business. And so when you're writing ordinance, to consider that in the future as well, that's something to think about. In addition to thinking about impacts to when you build transmission lines alongside borough roads, state roads, and bearing the costs of those projects and those road expansion projects, and having to move those utilities as well. And that sadly, unfortunately, can take away from those road project funds. And so we don't want to do that either. You know, if we're going to build something and then 5 years later, the borough or the state wants to build or expand a road, and now we have to move it, and instead of working together and collaborating and saying, oh, if we would have talked to each other, we could have figured out maybe a better timing for both of these projects to coincide, so we don't have to waste millions of dollars of road funding in moving utilities. And so another thing that MEA is interested in exploring also is utility corridors and looking at that as an option. And we still have a lot of space and place left in the borough to think about something like that. Utility corridors are not easy by any means, and it's also trying to hold the crystal ball and predict the future and what your area is going to look like in 10, 20 years. But it's something that we're also open to, and it's just another option to consider from both the work that the Planning Commission has to do as well as the Assembly. So we totally appreciate what you guys have to do and what you guys have to consider. And in a lot of the same ways, we're in the same boat. You know, how do we figure out the future? How do we make our residents, our customers happy? And so we're doing the best that we can, but we just want to make sure that there's no surprises with this project, because it is a substantial project, but it's also an important project for providing reliable power that we're required by state law to do. So any questions?
Any questions from Assembly or, yes, Assembly Person Hours?
So thank you for the presentation and the update. So you know that I'm very sympathetic to the need for power and what it requires to get it to folks. And, you know, if they don't want to use power, that's one thing. But if they want to flip their light switches and turn on their appliances, I am thinking about the ordinance, and I am thinking about a couple of impacts that I think do impact the community. So I've got two questions. One is just, I know a lot of utilities are looking to underground their power lines because of fire risk. I know Cordova has buried all their lines, and they actually consider it a cost savings because of, you know, when they've had to go in and get into areas, it can be extreme, especially in Cordova. So where is MEA at all in terms of looking at undergrounding lines? Absolutely. And if you know, totally. You don't have to answer tonight.
Oh no, I love data and facts like this. And I'll answer that really quickly so that I can remember your question in the next 5 seconds. But basically, with a lot of the underground is happening with distribution lines. We don't have buried transmission lines in the state, and that's because we don't have anyone that's qualified to work on a transmission line that's underground. And so if there was something to happen to that transmission line, and we would have to call someone in from out of state, and who knows how long that would take and repairs would take. And so there's a lot of public emergency and urgency that could potentially come or a result of that if you have buried transmission. But we do bury about half of our distribution lines, which is a majority of our lines at MEA and in the borough. Almost half of those are underground. So we are transitioning more to, especially with new development, putting distribution lines underground. But we can't quite do the same thing with transmission. And underground transmission is used, it's more popular in like very urban areas, concrete jungles, because you don't have space to put them overhead between big skyscrapers and buildings. But the cost for those underground transmission lines are about 6 to 10 times more than overhead. So that's another important consideration. And then I would just say, Google underground transmission, and it is ugly. Like what they have to dig up, the depth, the concrete they have to pour, like there's huge environmental impacts to consider with that, burying transmission lines as well. And so it's kind of like, I know someone doesn't want to see one in their backyard, but at the same time, like how much do they want to see their backyard dug up as well? So there's certainly trade-offs to both, but we do have about half of our distribution lines, which is over 2,400-ish miles of distribution lines that are buried underground at this time.
Okay. Yeah, I hadn't heard about the concrete. My understanding is Cordova actually has all their lines buried, and I'm mostly thinking about the wildfire risk, which is a real issue for us. So,
and sometimes, like we spoke with Division of Forestry just to get their feedback and opinion on that. And one of the actual nice things about the transmission easements is because they are wider, they're usually on average about 100 feet wide, is that they do provide a natural fire break for wildfires at times.
Yeah.
So there is, I know there's, again,
There-
there's,
right.
there's,
I
there's
mean,
the trade-offs
there's-
and there's the what ifs, and then there's always what happens when the
we
scenario
all know the
actually
stories,
happens. Yeah,
of
for sure.
Power line triggered wildfires, and we've had our own. So that's definitely a big concern in mitigating that. The other concern is fish. Our salmon runs are in poor shape, and you're going to be crossing the Little Sioux a couple times, and then some tributaries. And people love to go out on your nice cleared pathways. It's just a natural temptation. What sort of steps are you looking at or considering to keep people off of those pathways that you've created, and to particularly to protect the streams?
Yeah, absolutely.
There.
So fortunately, being in the Matsu Borough, which is, there's a lot of watershed and a lot of water areas and streams and things to consider. And I mean, we do have an extensive history building power lines to go over all of those streams. And there is things that you can do in terms of pole placement, line extensions, and placements like that to go further over streams so that you're not getting close to the banks or other potential hazards or issues that could create. So there are some mitigation opportunities there in that regard, and not having impacts to your streams or banks. And then some of the other things that we can do is put in concrete barriers along certain portions of right-of-way. So nothing gets more irritating driving an ATV and then your path is cut off by a massive, large concrete barrier. And so there's things like that we can do to not create just a straightaway path for people. And then there's, of course, other things where if it's, there's based on property owners and what they decide to do with that right of way, and making it a public trail or not if they want. Like, they have those options too as property and parcel owners. So we have to work together and collaborate with that, and going through the permitting process to determine what and how they want those right of ways to be used.
Okay. Well, I just wasn't sure what you did to deal with that kind of trespass, especially the ATVs, because that would probably be what you'd see out there and have impacts on the stream. So kind of knowing how you approach that, how you've approached that.
Did you guys want to add any? John's done this a lot, and he's the engineer guy, so he could probably.
Hi, John Sinclair, Director of Engineering for MEA. So typically for stream crossings, or actually river crossings, a lot of times the Corps of Engineer or other permitting agencies will require setbacks where we can't cut vegetation. So in general, near there, our poles are taller just because of the permitting requirements. So you have, like you were talking about, 75-foot setback or even further setback where we can't touch the vegetation. We can't clear it, so we got to go over it, which means there is going to be a vegetation buffer. If those are the agency's requirements, there's going to be a natural vegetation buffer that we don't touch. We'll wind up putting in larger structures, usually steel structures, to span that distance, and we'll use the topography so that we're up on higher elevations. Some of these spans can be half a mile if we need to be, depending on topo, depending on design requirements. But that's typical for larger river crossings, is that we don't touch the vegetation on either side because they don't want erosion. They don't want people crossing it. So the agencies typically limit what we can do there. So we'll cross them aerial, but there'll be quite a bit of vegetation. 75, 100 foot, depending on what the requirement is from the agency.
Any other questions from Assembly? Yes, CJ, question.
Commissioner Cohn, and I have a couple questions. You mentioned the utilidors. Are there any utilidors currently in the Mat-Su?
Yeah.
No, not that I know of. However, in the MOA there is. So in Anchorage, we have several corridors that we built. When I worked for CA, we built in those corridors.
Okay, and just so I understand, it would only be for distribution lines. If you put in a utilidor, transmission lines cannot go through utilidors? Or are they?
Other way around, generally speaking. So usually what, at least in the Muni, how it's set up is that's for all utilities. So gas, water, communications, and electric. So it's a known location. And people understand, okay, there's so much area, so much right of way, and that's where they all go. There's pluses and minuses to that, but that's how they set it up in the Muni.
Okay, thanks. That answered that question. The question that I had is of your public involvement, how well was that attended? Did you get a lot of public that come out for your meetings throughout that time?
Yeah, at our open houses, we'd have plenty of folks attend those, but we knew that certainly wasn't enough. And so we did a lot of other informational things. So we have an email list with 40,000 of our member emails that has a 60% read rate on average. And so we were pushing out information to folks that way. We also did regular postcard mailings to folks for informational updates, head here to provide us feedback. We also had feedback forms that folks could just literally fold and put in the mail and send back to us if they didn't want to go online and engage that way. So we pretty much tried to provide every option, radio ads, the list goes on. And again, that's just because we were trying to make sure that there weren't any surprises with this project because it's so big. And so under the proposed amended ordinance, with how that is, we would have, the public process isn't the issue for us. And maybe not even necessarily that needs to be changed because we went above and beyond that of what was even needed to. And under that proposed ordinance, it's only asking to have just 2 public meetings and a hearing. And so it's kind of but the thing that I think we would agree on is that the appeals process was just weird because we, MEA, had to host that appeals process. And so I could totally understand why a member, a resident, someone of the public is saying, wait, I want to appeal MEA's project, but I have to send my appeal to them and let them sort it out and analyze it and set up a committee that they get to designate who the committee members are and then have them respond to that appeal. So totally understand why that wouldn't feel like a trusted, responsible, process. And so I think that's definitely an area that could be improved upon, is having an appeals process that provides a third-party organization to review and submit member feedback and comments, and then help decide what mitigation efforts might be required or needed or suggested, back to the utility. And I think that would help build more credibility and trust with our stakeholders, with our members, for sure.
Yes, go ahead, sir.
So I'm just trying to understand, particularly on the central segment here. It says that we're, let's see, so the one that I believe you're wanting to go with is the northern, is that correct?
Correct. Yeah. So this is just a breakdown of that process of showing how when we got down to those final two options, what was up against in that analysis of where to go. So
So what I'm curious about is the right-of-way cleared is 11.6 miles.
Yep.
Correct? And on the southern, it was only 1.4. Yet somehow we're only crossing 53 parcels of land. And on that 1.4, we crossed 228.
yes, and a big thing about that why is in that northern section. Trying to find the new map. Sorry. Actually, let me just go back here. This northern part section there in the middle is 3 property owners, technically 3 Borough Land Trust. They're very large.
Okay.
So less impact again to small parcel property residential owners and larger land, public landowners up in that area.
These 220, but we're only adding 1.4 of right-of-way. So is this going along already lines that are already in and would just be adding? So
with we currently have distribution line running along Wasilla Fishhook Road, and that's only a 40-foot easement. And so we would have to cut in a 100-foot
So
easement
it'd
for
expand
transmission.
that- it would push
Expand
them
that
out.
and get the approval from DOT, which we're
Okay.
kind of in this. If they're going to expand that road in the future and what that looks like and having to relocate those utilities even more,
Yeah,
you
sure.
know, so
That
there
makes
was just a
sense.
lot of up in the air about that and what the actual feasibility of that could look like.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep.
Further questions or comment? Yes, Assemblyperson Fauna, go ahead.
Quick question to the engineer, please. You said on average, the width is acquired about 100 feet for a project like this? Okay. Is there ever been project in the past that, you know, when there's a major power line going through, potentially also working maybe with a DOT or whatever, where their future road will be built as well? Is there any history of that? And is this in any factor? Was there anything factor into the decision making?
Yeah, most certainly. You know, that's where we love to collaborate more with DOT. Sometimes that relationship isn't always easy, as well as like their challenges and just planning projects and state funding as well, and being able to predict the future. And in a lot of ways, for what we provide in terms of power, we have to move faster than what they're able to determine or say for certain, like this is what we're going to do. And so we try to collaborate the best that we can. And you'll see it in a lot of times with transmission lines, like especially in the Anchorage area, for instance, going up and down Tudor Road, you'll see large transmission lines, and that width of that road really plays into a lot of that easement part that's necessary. But you'll see on the non-easement part or the non-road part of that easement, maybe only like 15 to 20 feet going to the side of that. And so there is some play depending on how the transmission line, how the pole, where it sits along that road, and then of course how that road expands to give some give and take within that 100 feet easement. But this would, you know, going down Wasilla Fishhook Road, you know, there's already pretty limited space there, and smaller properties and parcels along that road as well.
With this, especially on this image, it's the Central E option. This would give potentially a lot availability to areas that currently there is no power at all, because with how much further is that correct assumption of that?
I mean, yes, most certainly you can build a distribution off of transmission, and so for future project growth and development. But another cool benefit of this project is that it actually gives us a new looping mechanism and a redundancy in our power system. We're a very lean power system, and so what happens is when we connect that transmission line into those new substations, but also into that outside infrastructure, that McRae substation down there, and then the other existing transmission line that runs up past that fishhook area on that side. When we connect all of this together, we now have a looping mechanism. So if something happens to the power down in Palmer proper, we can actually backfeed in now from this other system and other substations and other areas. And so when we have outages, and let's say we have 4,000 people out, we can reduce that outage, down to a few hundred people because we can backfeed in off of this transmission in those substations. So it does give a benefit not to just this specific area, but also the membership as a whole and having some other options to redistribute power in our system when we have big outages.
My next question was about the power outages, but you pretty much answered it. So it's important to tell people that there is going to be benefit in potential power outages, that it is the loop system.
Yeah.
And there's a huge benefit to
Yeah,
that.
it's all about reliability. And when we survey our members, we know how hard surveys are to do, but when we survey our members, it's the most important thing to them is reliability and having that capability to flip that light switch on and not even know it and not even have to care about it or say that's important to them on a survey. That's their expectation. And so that's our number one goal with these types of projects and infrastructure is reliability and making sure that we improve it, because it's literally like a life or death dependency on power these days. And so we have to make sure that we're being reliable.
Any further questions? Okay, all right, thank you.
All right, thank you so much.
Assemblyperson hours, would you make a motion that we go past 10 o'clock? I'll let you decide what.
I move to extend the meeting to 10:15 p.m.
Okay. Is there any objection to the assembly extending their meeting to 10:15? Okay, seeing none. Do you have the same drop deadline that we have? Huh?
Midnight.
Oh, midnight. Oh, okay. All right. Okay. All righty. So the next part is yours, Madam Chair, for take comments from your planning commission members.
Okay. We'll start with Commissioner Allen. Do you have any comments?
No comments. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Shane.
No comments. Thank you.
All right. Commissioner Fernandez.
Thank you. I would just say this is probably the highest level of engagement that I've seen on a joint hearing like this that I've participated in, and certainly on any board or commission that I've served on. So really provocative, encouraging, educational conversations, and I really appreciate everyone's participation. So thank you.
Okay, and I'll give my comments.
What about
Not
this
yet.
lady
Oh,
here?
I'm sorry. Commissioner McCabe. I missed you completely. I usually have a checklist. I missed it.
Just thanks for everybody's hard work. It was very informative. Thank you.
Okay, now we'll
Okay.
allow you to speak.
Yeah, very informative. I really appreciate everybody's hard work on the planning department, all the things that you presented tonight. Really, really good meeting. And I agree, a lot of activity. It's been really good. And yeah, we don't mind going past our 2 hours on occasion, so this is okay.
Assemblyperson Hale, are you still online? Do you have parting comments, sir?
No comment. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Okay. Did Assemblyperson Fawn or Yount ever sign on? No. Okay. Alrighty. Assemblyperson Fawn, parting comments? Assemblyperson Nowers, parting comments?
I'll just say the fact that we've added 40,000 people in 20 years and maybe a little bit more makes this a really fun time to be an assembly member and a planning commission member. How boring if we weren't growing gangbusters. And then just thank you again to the entire planning department. Like, I just really appreciate I can't believe the amount of work you're having to do on some of those things, and I'm really appreciative that we don't have to go dig into the details and do all that groundwork. So just really appreciate the hours and hours that went into it. Thank you.
Mr. Brown, parting comments? Mr. Attorney, parting comments? Ms. Clerk, no comments? Okay, Assemblyperson McKee, parting comments?
Very briefly, I really liked your presentation. I was not sold before, but when you talked about the substations and the redundancies, I'm good with that. And then to see these numbers on here like this, it's like, what's not to like? And also, you guys that did the other, that's amazing stuff. I just hope that when it goes out again, we get like 50,000 times the answers, because then you can do something with it. So well done.
Assemblyperson 2, parting comments?
I would just say you all did a great job in your presentations. I enjoyed them, and I enjoyed taking the time and talking with you. And thank you for all your hard work. And I know it was a lot to put it out here, so thank you.
Assemblyperson Bernier, parting comments, sir?
Yeah, I wanted to thank the Planning Commission and the planning staff and all your hard work. Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you for your love and blessings. Thank you for your grace and forgiveness. Please help us to do your will, to share your word and spread your love. We pray for our leadership. Please bless them with wisdom and to follow your commands. Please help and bless our veterans, our elderly, our sick, broken, our addicted and downtrodden. Please give our parents a will to teach your word and their children a heart to listen. May you bless our military, first responders, teachers, doctors, and staff. We pray for Israel and all the innocent that are involved in the bloodshed. May you, Lord, bring peace and love to the Middle East and around the world. Please, Lord, bring forth a great revival that will change the hearts and minds in our valley. May it spread through our state and country. We pray for our enemies. May you cast out the evil and learn to love one another. In Jesus' name, amen.
Thank you, Planning Department and Public Works and MEA for making it a great evening. And with that, we will adjourn at 9:50, 9:47.